The sound of the slap was not what you would expect. It was not the sharp crack of a movie punch or the theatrical slap of a soap opera. It was
Please,
wet.
please
It was
help me.
sickening. It was
I
the sound
can't
of
do
skin
this.
meeting skin with the full force of entitled rage behind it. The sound cut through the hushed murmur of La Lumiere like a knife through silk, and in that instant, everything stopped. The string quartet faltered mid-note. A waiter dropped his tray, and the crystal champagne flutes shattered against marble with a sound like breaking stars. 60 pairs of eyes turned toward table 12, the King's View table, the table reserved for Manhattan's most powerful elite. And there, in the center of that frozen tableau, stood two women. One was Isabella Whitmore, 29 years old, blonde hair pulled into a chignon so severe it could cut glass, wearing a couture gown that cost more than most people earned in a year. On her left hand, a diamond the size of a quail's egg caught the light and threw it back in cold blue fire. $30 million, according to Forbes. An engagement ring from Marcus Sterling, the billionaire tech genius, the man who had built an empire from a single revolutionary piece of code. The other woman wore the black apron and a name tag that said Victoria S. Her cheek was turning red, a perfect handprint blooming across pale skin like a violent flower. But she did not cry. She did not flinch. She did not run. She simply turned her head, slowly, so slowly, and looked at Isabella Whitmore with eyes that were not the eyes of a waitress. They were cold. They were analytical. They were furious. Victoria Hayes had been invisible for 5 years. She had chosen invisibility the way some people choose a career or a city or a lover. She had made herself into a ghost, a shadow, a piece of functional furniture in the lives of the powerful and wealthy. She had served their wine, cleared their plates, refilled their water glasses with movements so practiced they bordered on choreography. And in all that time, in all those thousands of interactions, not one of them had truly seen her. Until tonight. Funny how easy it is to disappear, Victoria thought as she felt the sting spread across her cheek. You put on an apron, you smile. You say yes, ma'am, and right away, sir, and my apologies. And suddenly you are not a person anymore. You are furniture, a ghost, but ghosts see everything. And Victoria Hayes had been watching. She had been waiting. She had been planning. 5 years ago, she had been somebody. Victoria Hayes, age 22, PhD candidate at Caltech, theoretical mathematician, the woman who could see patterns in chaos the way other people saw shapes in clouds. She had been brilliant. She had been recognized. She had been loved. And then she had made a choice. She had chosen to become invisible. She had chosen survival over recognition, safety over glory, silence over voice. She had walked away from everything she had built, everything she loved, and she had disappeared into the vast anonymous machinery of the service industry. But tonight the invisibility was ending. Isabella Whitmore was breathing heavily, her chest rising and falling with adrenaline and triumph. She had just asserted dominance in the most primal way possible. She had struck a servant in front of Manhattan's elite, and she expected exactly what always happened in these situations. Apologies, groveling, removal of the offending staff member, order restored. Instead, Victoria Hayes placed the bottle of 1982 Chateau Margaux back on the silver trolley with steady hands. Not a tremor, not a shake. Her movements were deliberate, controlled, precise. She straightened her spine, she lifted her chin, and then she spoke. You should not have done that. The words were not loud, they were not a shout or a scream. They were clear and low, and they carried across the silent restaurant like a blade. Every person in that 60-story dining room heard them. Every person felt the weight of them. Isabella's face flushed. What did you say to me? Victoria took a half step forward. Her eyes never left Isabella's face. I said you should not have done that. Pierre Laurent, the restaurant manager, was already rushing over, his face pale and slick with sweat. He was a man who understood power dynamics, who had spent 30 years catering to the whims of the wealthy, and he knew that this moment could cost him everything. Miss Whitmore, Mr. Sterling, 1,000 apologies. This is unacceptable. I will handle this immediately. He turned to Victoria, his eyes full of fury. The fury of a man who is about to lose his most important clients because of one clumsy waitress. "Sanchez, you are fired. Leave now." But Victoria ignored him. She looked past the sputtering manager, past the furious socialite, and locked eyes with the most powerful man in the room, Marcus Sterling. He was 35 years old, tall and lean with dark hair that was always slightly disheveled from running his hands through it when he was thinking. He had the kind of face that photographed well for magazine covers, but looked tired in person, the face of a man who had not slept properly in years. His eyes were gray, the color of winter storms, and right now they were wide with something that looked like shock. He was staring at Victoria as if he had seen a ghost. His mouth opened. A single word escaped, barely a breath. "Victoria." It was not a question for a waitress. It was a question for someone he knew, someone he had lost, someone impossible. Isabella's head whipped around. "Julian, what did you say? You know this woman? This thing?" But Marcus did not answer her. He was frozen, his phone forgotten in his hand, his entire world narrowing to the woman in the black apron with the red handprint on her face. The woman who should not exist. The woman who had vanished 5 years ago without a trace. Victoria gave him a small, bitter smile, the first real expression she had allowed herself in 5 years. "Hello, Marcus." The restaurant did not just freeze this time. It shattered. Whispers erupted like wildfire. Did he say he knows her? Who is she? Is that really? It cannot be. The patrons pulled out their phones, fingers flying across screens, searching, confirming, spreading the news that something extraordinary was happening at La Lumiere. Marcus rose slowly from his chair. He was a tall man, and his shadow fell across the table like a judgment. He looked at the red mark on Victoria's face. He looked at the $30 million ring on Isabella's hand. His voice, when he finally spoke, was barely above a whisper. "You hit her." It was not an accusation. It was a statement of fact, a confirmation of something his brain was still struggling to process. Isabella's voice rose, shrill with panic. "She deserved it. She ruined my cuff. She is nobody." Nobody. The word hung in the air like poison. Marcus shook his head slowly. His eyes never left Victoria's face. She is not nobody. She is Victoria Hayes. If the first name had caused a ripple, the second name was a tidal wave. There was not a person in that dining room, not a tech investor or hedge fund manager or society maven, who did not know that name. Victoria Hayes, the prodigy, the ghost, the woman who had co-created the Prometheus algorithm, the revolutionary artificial intelligence that had made Marcus Sterling a billionaire 10 times over. The woman who had vanished without a trace 5 years ago, sparking rumors of kidnapping, espionage, witness protection, death. The woman who was now standing in front of them wearing a $30 polyester apron and a name tag that said Victoria S. Isabella Whitmore had not just slapped a waitress. She had just assaulted the most sought-after missing person in the technology world. To understand what Victoria Hayes meant to these people, you had to go back 6 years. You had to go back to a sunny afternoon at Caltech, to a lecture hall where a young CEO named Marcus Sterling stood at a podium talking about the future of artificial intelligence with the kind of charisma that made venture capitalists reach for their checkbooks. He was 29 years old and hungry. He had a good idea, solid funding, and the kind of ambition that could reshape industries. But he did not have the one thing he needed most. He did not have someone who could turn his vision into reality. After the lecture, as students filed out and professors made small talk, a young woman approached him. She was 22, with dark hair pulled into a messy ponytail, and eyes that seemed to look through you rather than at you. She wore jeans and an MIT sweatshirt that had seen better days. She carried a worn backpack covered in equations written in permanent marker. She did not introduce herself with flattery or networking pleasantries. She simply asked a question. "Have you considered the recursive learning problem in your model?" Marcus turned, intrigued. "I am sorry?" "Your AI model. It is based on pattern recognition from existing data sets. But that means you are only teaching the system to recognize what has already happened. You are not teaching it to think. You are teaching it to remember." Most people would have been offended. Marcus Sterling was fascinated. They went for coffee. Coffee turned into dinner. Dinner turned into a 3 a.m. conversation in an empty diner where Victoria sketched algorithms on napkins, and Marcus watched her with the kind of attention usually reserved for religious experiences. She was not just smart. She was brilliant in a way that made his own intelligence feel like a candle next to a forest fire. Her name was Victoria Hayes. She was a PhD candidate in theoretical mathematics. She saw the world in patterns and probabilities, in elegant equations that described the chaos of existence. And she had an idea. "I am not trying to predict the future," she explained, her eyes bright with passion. "I am trying to teach an AI how to reason, to understand why things happen, not just that they happen. I call it the Prometheus Protocol." Marcus hired her that night. Not formally, not with contracts or negotiations, but with a handshake and a promise. "Come work with me, build this, together." She said yes. For 2 years, they were inseparable. They worked 20-hour days fueled by coffee and takeout and a shared obsessive vision. They built a laboratory, assembled a team, and poured every waking moment into creating something revolutionary. Victoria wrote code with the precision of a concert pianist and the creativity of a poet. Marcus handled the business, the investors, the public face of the company they were building. But it was more than just work. There were the 3 a.m. pizza deliveries when they were too exhausted to leave the lab. Marcus would insist on Hawaiian, and Victoria would pretend to be offended while picking off the pineapple and eating it separately. There were the walks through the Caltech campus when they needed to clear their heads, Marcus explaining his vision for the company, while Victoria pointed out constellations and told him the myths behind them. There were the small moments that meant everything. Marcus bringing her favorite coffee without being asked, the one from the place across town that she pretended was not worth the drive, but secretly loved. Victoria leaving sticky notes on his monitor when she made breakthroughs at night, wanting him to share the joy of discovery when he came in the next morning. And there were the moments when they looked at each other across a room full of servers and realized that they were building more than a company. They were building a life. Marcus fell in love first. He was obvious about it, in the way that brilliant men are often obvious about everything except their own feelings. He found excuses to stand close to her. He laughed too hard at her jokes. He watched her when he thought she was not looking, his expression soft with something that might have been wonder. Victoria fell more slowly. She had been hurt before, in college, by a boyfriend who had taken her research and published it under his own name. She had learned to guard her work, her ideas, her heart. But Marcus was different. Marcus saw her brilliance and celebrated it instead of trying to claim it. At least that was what she thought. One night, at 2 a.m, they were alone in the lab. The rest of the team had gone home hours ago. They were testing a new iteration of the Prometheus algorithm, watching the data flow across screens in cascading rivers of light. It worked. For the first time, the AI was not just predicting outcomes based on historical data. It was reasoning. It was understanding cause and effect. It was thinking. Victoria let out a sound that was half laugh, half sob. "We did it! Marcus, we actually did it!" She turned to him, her eyes bright with tears of joy and exhaustion and triumph. And Marcus, who had been watching her instead of the screens, said the thing he had been holding back for months. "I love you." The words hung in the air between them, fragile and enormous. Victoria's breath caught. "What?" "I love you, Victoria. I have loved you since the moment you walked up to me after that lecture and told me my entire model was flawed. I love the way your mind works. I love the way you see patterns and chaos. I love you." She should have been cautious. She should have thought about the implications, the power dynamics, the risk of mixing professional and personal. But standing there in the glow of their greatest achievement, with the man who had given her the resources to build her dreams, she let herself feel. "I love you too." He kissed her then, surrounded by the machines they had built together, and it felt like coming home. For 6 months, they were happy. They were partners in every sense of the word. They finished each other's sentences in code. They moved through the laboratory like dancers who had been practicing together for years. They talked about the future with the kind of certainty that only young people in love can manage. Marcus told her he wanted to marry her. "Not now," he said, "but someday. When Prometheus was launched and the company was stable. When they had time to breathe. He promised they would build a life together that matched the empire they were building in code." Victoria believed him. She believed him when he said they were partners. She believed him when he promised to always credit her work. She believed him when he said the company belonged to both of them, regardless of what the paperwork said. She believed him because she loved him, and because the alternative was too painful to consider. Sterling Innovations launched with the Prometheus algorithm at its core. It was not just successful, it was transformative. The AI could model climate change with unprecedented accuracy. It could predict pandemic patterns months in advance. It could restructure financial markets, optimize supply chains, revolutionize medical research. Forbes called it the single most valuable piece of code in the 21st century. Marcus Sterling became a billionaire, and Victoria Hayes became invisible. It was her choice, at first. She insisted that her name be kept off the public-facing documents, off the patents, off the press releases. "I do not want fame, Marcus. I want the work. Let me be the ghost in the machine." Marcus agreed. He told himself he was respecting her wishes. He told himself he was protecting her from the spotlight she claimed not to want. He told himself a lot of things. But somewhere in those 2 years, something else happened. Marcus fell in love with her, not just with her mind, though that would have been enough. He fell in love with the way she explained complex theories using metaphors from cooking. He fell in love with the way she hummed while she coded, unconscious melodies that filled the laboratory. He fell in love with the way she looked at him when he finally understood something she had been trying to teach him, her whole face lighting up with joy. One night, at 2 a.m., surrounded by server racks and the soft glow of monitors, he kissed her. She kissed him back. For 6 months, they were partners in every sense of the word. They built an empire during the day and built a life together at night. They talked about the future, marriage, children, a legacy that went beyond code and companies. Marcus promised her they would do it all together, as equals, as partners, always. But promises, Victoria would learn, are easy to make and easier to break. The cracks started small. Board meetings where Marcus described her as a junior programmer, patent filings that listed his name first and hers in smaller print, if at all. Interviews where he spoke about the creation of Prometheus in the first-person singular. "I developed, I created, I built," Victoria noticed. At first, she said nothing. She told herself it was just optics, just the nature of being the public face of a company. Marcus was the CEO. Of course he got the credit. That was how these things worked. But the cracks widened. 5 years ago, Victoria made a discovery. She was doing routine maintenance on the Prometheus code when she found something that should not have been there. A backdoor. A piece of parasitic code buried so deep in the system's architecture that it would have been invisible to anyone who had not written the original algorithms. Someone had been siphoning data from Sterling Innovations for years. Someone had access to their research and development, their financial projections, their vulnerabilities. Someone was bleeding the company dry from the inside. Victoria traced the code. It led back to the original seed funding, to the very foundation of the company. And the signature on that code belonged to Derek Ashford. Derek Ashford was Marcus Sterling's first business partner, the venture capitalist who had given him the initial funding to start Sterling Innovations 7 years ago. Derek had contributed not just money, but preliminary code, a proof of concept algorithm that Marcus had built upon. But 2 years into their partnership, Marcus had discovered that Derek was embezzling funds, trying to steal the company's intellectual property. There had been a hostile buyout, a public scandal, legal threats. Marcus had pushed Derek out and salvaged the company. Or so the story went. But now Victoria was looking at evidence that Derek had never really left. He had embedded himself in the code like a virus, watching, waiting, stealing, and he had been doing it for 7 years. Victoria knew she had to tell Marcus. She gathered her evidence, practiced her presentation, and went to his office late one night when she knew they would be alone. She expected shock. She expected gratitude. She expected action. What she got was dismissal. Marcus barely looked up from his laptop as she explained what she had found. He nodded absently, made non-committal sounds, and finally said, "I will have the security team look into it." That was it. Victoria felt something cold settle in her chest. "Marcus, this is serious. Derek has access to everything." Marcus sighed, the sigh of a busy man being interrupted with minutiae. "Victoria, I appreciate your diligence, but security is not your department. Let the professionals handle it." Professionals. as if she had not built every line of code in the Prometheus algorithm, as if she were not the only person who could truly understand the depth of Derek's infiltration. "I am a professional, Marcus." He looked up then, and there was something in his eyes she had never seen before. Impatience, condescension. "I know that, but you are a programmer, not a cybersecurity expert. This requires specialized knowledge." "I wrote the code, Marcus. I am the specialized knowledge." And that was when it happened. That was when Marcus said the thing that could not be unsaid. "I gave you the resources to write the code, Victoria. I gave you the team, the funding, the infrastructure. You are very talented, but let us not pretend this company would exist without me." The silence that followed was absolute. Victoria looked at the man she loved, the man she had built an empire with, the man who had just claimed ownership of her work, her genius, her 2 years of 20-hour days and sleepless nights and brilliant breakthroughs. She saw him clearly for the first time. He was not her partner, he was her employer. And in his mind, she was not his equal. She was his employee. "You promised we were in this together," she said quietly. "We are, but someone has to make the final decisions. Someone has to be in charge. And that someone is you." Marcus smiled, the kind of smile you give a child who has just said something naive. "That someone is always me, Victoria. This is my company." "Our company?" "No, mine. You signed the contracts. You know how this works." Victoria felt something break inside her. Not her heart, something deeper. Her trust. Her belief that hard work and brilliance and partnership meant something more than paperwork and power dynamics. She left his office that night and went home to her small apartment. She sat at her laptop and stared at the Prometheus code, the beautiful, elegant symphony of logic she had created, and she made a decision. If Marcus was going to erase her from the narrative, she would erase herself completely. The next morning, she received a message that changed everything. It came through her laptop camera. One moment she was making coffee, the next her screen flickered to life without her touching it. A video feed appeared, live, real time. It showed a college campus, MIT, a dorm room. And in that dorm room, sitting at a desk with headphones on, completely unaware that he was being watched, was her younger brother, Nathan Hayes, 18 years old, brilliant, trusting, innocent. The camera zoomed in on his face, closer, closer, until his features filled her screen. Then a text message appeared below the video feed. "Ghosts cannot be missed, but brothers can." It was not signed. It did not need to be. Victoria knew exactly who had sent it. Derek Ashford. She sat very still, her coffee growing cold in her hands, and understood the situation with perfect clarity. Derek had not just infiltrated the company's code, he had infiltrated her life. He knew about Nathan. He knew that her younger brother was her only family, the person she would do anything to protect. And Derek was making her choose. She could expose him, fight him, try to save Sterling Innovations. But if she did, Nathan would pay the price. Derek had the resources, the connections, the ruthlessness to make good on his threat. Or she could disappear, become a ghost, remove herself from the equation entirely. And maybe, just maybe, Derek would leave Nathan alone. Victoria made her choice in less than 5 minutes. She wiped her hard drives. She liquidated her bank accounts. She created a new identity, complete with social security number, driver's license, rental history. Victoria Hayes ceased to exist, and in her place emerged Victoria Sanchez. She sent Nathan to a safe house in New Zealand with a security team of former Mossad operatives. She told him she was going on an extended research sabbatical, something classified and important. He believed her. Nathan always believed her. And then Victoria Hayes disappeared. The first year was grief. Victoria worked as a barista in a Seattle coffee shop, a tiny place near Pike Place Market where the rain seemed to fall every single day. She made lattes for tech workers who reminded her of the life she had left behind. She smiled and took orders and went home to a studio apartment that smelled like mildew and cried herself to sleep. She was not just hiding from Derek. She was healing from Marcus. Every night she replayed their last conversation. His voice saying, "This is my company, mine," as if she had been nothing more than a very talented employee. She had given him everything, her brilliance, her passion, her trust, her love, and he had taken it all and put his name on it. The second year was anger. She moved to Chicago and worked as a hotel maid at a luxury property downtown. She cleaned the rooms of wealthy businessmen and society women, scrubbing their toilets and making their beds and listening to them complain about trivial inconveniences. She saw Marcus on the news sometimes, on the television in the break room. He was dating actresses, models, heiresses. Moving on, thriving, while she was invisible. The anger burned in her chest like a coal that never went out. Not anger at Derek, though he deserved it. Anger at Marcus. Anger at herself for trusting him. Anger at a world that allowed brilliant women to be erased while mediocre men took credit for their work. The third year was planning. Victoria moved to Austin and got a job as a short-order cook in a diner that served breakfast 24 hours a day. She worked the graveyard shift, flipping eggs and frying bacon while the city slept. And during the day, when she should have been sleeping, she researched. She tracked Derek Ashford's movements. She analyzed financial records, public filings, shell company transactions. She saw the pattern. Derek was still bleeding Sterling Innovations dry, shorting the stock before major announcements, feeding innovations to competitors. Marcus had no idea. Or maybe he did, and simply did not care. Maybe Victoria's warnings 5 years ago had been dismissed so thoroughly that no one had ever followed up. She also researched Marcus. She read every interview, watched every presentation. She analyzed his body language, his word choices. She looked for signs of the man she had loved. She found none. The Marcus Sterling in those videos was polished, charismatic, successful. He was also hollow. There was no passion in his eyes when he talked about Prometheus. It was just a product to him now, a revenue stream. The fourth year was discovery. Victoria moved back to the East Coast, this time to a small town in Connecticut. She worked as a librarian, a job that gave her access to databases and research tools. And that was when she found the connection. Isabella Whitmore. Marcus had been dating her for 6 months. The media called them a perfect match. Old money and new money, tradition and innovation. But Victoria saw something else. She saw desperation. The Whitmore family was collapsing financially. Baron Charles Whitmore had made catastrophic investments in the 2008 crash and never recovered. He was leveraged beyond repair, drowning in debt. His only asset was his daughter, and his only lifeline was Derek Ashford. Victoria found the paper trail. Payments from shell companies linked to Derek flowing into Whitmore Holdings. Not enough to save the empire, but enough to buy cooperation. Enough to purchase a daughter's loyalty. Isabella Whitmore was not Marcus's girlfriend. She was Derek's inside agent. The fifth year was preparation. Victoria moved to Manhattan and got a job at La Lumiere. It took her 3 months to get hired. She had to create a flawless employment history for Victoria Sanchez, complete with references and experience, and a background that would pass the restaurant's rigorous screening. But she did it, and once she was inside, she watched. Marcus brought Isabella to La Lumiere once a month, always on the first Thursday. They always sat at table 12. And Isabella always let her guard down after the second glass of champagne. Victoria served their wine. She cleared their plates. She refilled their water glasses. And she listened. She heard Isabella on the phone with her father, discussing the merger, the deal, the timeline. She heard the stress in Isabella's voice, the desperation. This was not a woman in love. This was a woman trying to save her family. Victoria almost felt sorry for her. Almost. 3 weeks before tonight, Victoria had heard the conversation that confirmed everything. Isabella on the phone, saying the words that sealed her fate. The merger is the deal. Once I am married, we get the access. Tell Ashford to be patient. Victoria had gone home that night and finalized her plan. She would expose Derek. She would save the company she had built. And she would make Marcus see exactly what he had lost when he erased her. But she needed the perfect moment, the perfect catalyst. She needed Isabella to make a mistake. For 5 years, Victoria had lived in the shadows. She had worked jobs that paid minimum wage and lived in apartments that were barely habitable. She had cut herself off from everyone she loved, lived under a fake name, become a ghost. She had been invisible, but she had not been idle. Victoria watched from a distance as Marcus Sterling's life continued without her. She saw him on magazine covers, heard him on podcasts, read his interviews. He spent $100 million trying to find her, hiring private investigators and forensic data teams, following leads across 3 continents. He mourned her, publicly and privately. But he moved on. 3 years after her disappearance, Marcus started dating Isabella Whitmore. The engagement was announced a year later with all the fanfare of a royal wedding. Old money meets new money. The Whitmore dynasty aligning with the Sterling Empire. Forbes called it the merger of the century. Victoria saw the photos. She read the articles. She felt something twist in her chest that might have been jealousy or might have been vindication. Marcus had replaced her with a woman who brought nothing but a name and a pedigree and a willingness to smile for cameras. That was when Victoria started planning her return. She researched Isabella Whitmore and discovered that the perfect society princess had cracks in her foundation. The Whitmore family fortune was collapsing. Baron Charles Whitmore, Isabella's father, was drowning in debt, leveraged to the point of bankruptcy. Desperate people made desperate choices. Victoria dug deeper. She followed financial trails, analyzed shell companies, tracked payments, and she found the connection she was looking for. Derek Ashford had approached the Whitmores with a deal. He would bail out their failing empire. In exchange, Isabella would marry Marcus Sterling and give Derek access to the one thing he had always wanted: the keys to the Prometheus algorithm. Victoria saw the pattern. Derek was playing the long game. He had tried to steal the company 7 years ago and failed. Now he was trying again, using Isabella as his inside agent. And Marcus had no idea. Victoria made a decision. She would return. Not to save Marcus, not to reclaim her lost love, but to finish what Derek had started 5 years ago. She would expose him. She would protect the work she had created. And she would make Marcus Sterling see what he had lost. She moved back to New York. She got a job at La Lumiere, the exclusive restaurant where Marcus brought Isabella once a month for romantic dinners. She became Victoria Sanchez, the perfect invisible waitress, serving their wine and clearing their plates and listening to every word they said. For 6 months, she watched and waited. 3 weeks ago, she overheard the conversation that confirmed everything. Isabella was on the phone with her father. Victoria was refilling water glasses, invisible as always, and Isabella did not even lower her voice. "But father, the merger is the deal. Once I am married, we get the access. Tell Ashford to be patient. I will have Sterling's full trust after the wedding. His passcodes, his private servers, everything." Isabella hung up, ordered another bottle of champagne, and tipped Victoria $5. Victoria smiled, pocketed the tip, and began planning. Tonight was supposed to be the beginning. Victoria had studied Isabella's patterns, her tells, her habits. She knew that Isabella gestured wildly with her left hand when she was excited. She knew exactly how to time the wine pour so that Isabella's hand would hit her wrist at precisely the right moment. One drop of wine. One tiny, perfect drop on Isabella's custom couture cuff. It was not an accident, it was bait. And Isabella had taken it beautifully. The rage, the slap, the public humiliation in front of 60 witnesses. All of it was exactly what Victoria had planned. Well, almost exactly. She had not planned for the slap to hurt quite that much. Her cheek was on fire, and she could taste blood where her teeth had cut the inside of her mouth. But pain was temporary. Justice was forever. Now standing in the frozen restaurant with Marcus Sterling staring at her like she was a ghost made flesh, Victoria felt the weight of 5 years lift from her shoulders. The invisibility was over. Pierre Laurent was backing away, his face ashen. He had just tried to fire the most valuable woman in the technology industry. His career was probably over. But Victoria was not finished. She turned to the trembling manager and spoke clearly, her voice carrying to every corner of the silent restaurant. "Mr. Laurent, please call the police. I have been assaulted by a patron. I wish to file a report. And I believe that La Lumiere has the entire incident on video." The security cameras, of course. Every moment of the slap, every word of Isabella's tirade, all of it recorded in high definition. Isabella's face went white. "You would not dare." Victoria looked at her, really looked at her. And she saw not a villain, but a frightened woman who had made bad choices for understandable reasons. "Dare to what?" Victoria asked. "Dare to report a crime? Or dare to be a person who does not let you hit them?" Isabella opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. She looked like a fish drowning in air. Marcus finally found his voice. It was rough, broken. "Victoria, what do you want?" It was the same question he had asked her 6 years ago, when they first met. The same question she had answered with enthusiasm and hope and trust. This time her answer was different. Victoria held his gaze. She saw the shock in his eyes, the dawning horror, the beginning of understanding. She saw 5 years of searching, 5 years of guilt, 5 years of loss. I want justice, Marcus. I want my name back. I want my legacy. I want my life. She paused. The entire restaurant held its breath. But more than that, I want you to ask your fiancé who Derek Ashford is. The name hit Marcus like a physical blow. His face went rigid, his jaw clenched. Derek Ashford, the ghost from his past, the enemy he thought he had defeated. Victoria watched the realization spread across his features. She watched him connect the dots. Isabella, the Whitmores, Derek, the engagement, the merger, the access. All of it a trap. And he had walked into it blindly, arrogantly, stupidly. Because he had been so focused on filling the Victoria-shaped hole in his life that he had not bothered to ask the right questions about the woman he was marrying. Isabella was making the sound now a high-pitched keening noise that was not quite words. Her perfect composure was shattering like the champagne glasses that still littered the floor. This is insane. Marcus, she is lying. She is crazy. She has been stalking you. But even as she said the words, her hands were shaking. The $30 million ring caught the light and threw it back, a cold blue fire that matched the panic in her eyes. Marcus turned to look at his fiancée, really look at her. And he saw not the poised society beauty he had been dating for 18 months, but a frightened woman who had made a terrible choice. Is it true? His voice was quiet, deadly quiet. Isabella's mouth opened and closed. Her eyes darted to the exits, to the watching crowd, to Victoria, to Marcus. She was calculating, trying to find a way out, trying to find the right lie that would salvage this. But there was no lie big enough. Marcus, I can explain. Is it true? Isabella's eyes filled with tears. Real tears. Not the practiced ones she had perfected for charity galas and difficult conversations with her father. These were the tears of a woman watching her entire life collapse. My father, she whispered, he was going to lose everything. We were going to lose everything. The confession hung in the air like poison. So you sold me out to Derek Ashford. It was not a question. Isabella flinched as if he had struck her. It was not supposed to be like this. Derek said it was just business. He said no one would get hurt. He said you owed him, that you had stolen his work years ago. Marcus's laugh was bitter. And you believed him. Of course you believed him, because it was easier than admitting you were selling yourself to the highest bidder. The cruelty of the words made several people in the dining room gasp. But Marcus was past caring about appearances. He looked at Isabella and saw his own blindness reflected back. He had chosen her for all the wrong reasons. She was beautiful, well-connected, from the right family. She looked perfect on his arm at charity events and board meetings. She was safe. She was nothing like Victoria. And that had been the point. After Victoria vanished, Marcus had tried to fill the emptiness with women who were her opposite. Women who wanted his money and his status and his name. Women who would never challenge him, never push back, never make him feel like he had to earn their respect. Women he could control. Isabella had been perfect for that. Until she had betrayed him. Until he had discovered that even the most controlled relationship could be weaponized by someone cleverer than he was. He turned away from her and looked at Victoria. She stood there with the red mark of Isabella's hand still blooming on her cheek, wearing a waitress uniform and a name tag that was a lie. But her eyes were clear and fierce and unbroken. She had spent 5 years in hiding, 5 years working minimum wage jobs and living in fear, all to protect her brother and prepare for this moment. She had not just survived, she had planned, she had strategized, she had turned her invisibility into power. And Marcus Sterling, billionaire CEO, master of the universe, realized with crushing clarity that he had never seen her more clearly than he did right now. Victoria, he said. His voice broke on her name. She looked at him, and in her eyes he saw everything he had lost, everything he had thrown away, because he could not handle being with someone who was his equal, someone who challenged him, someone who made him better. Why this? He asked again. Why become invisible? Victoria's expression softened, just for a moment. And in that moment, Marcus saw the woman he had loved, the woman who had explained quantum mechanics using metaphors about baking, the woman who had kissed him at 2 a.m. surrounded by server racks, the woman who had believed him when he promised they were partners. Because Victoria said quietly. Invisible women see everything, and we remember everything. And eventually we stop being invisible. She paused. The restaurant was absolutely silent, except for the distant wail of sirens growing closer. I spent 5 years watching you, Marcus. I watched you search for me. I watched you mourn. I watched you move on. And I waited for the right moment to come back. Why now? Because Derek was going to win. Victoria's voice hardened. He was going to use Isabella to steal everything we built. Everything I built. And I could not let that happen. She took a step closer to him. They were only feet apart now, separated by overturned chairs and shattered crystal and 5 years of hurt. You erased me once, Marcus. You took my work and put your name on it. You treated me like I was a tool instead of a partner. You made me invisible. Her eyes blazed. But I am not invisible anymore. And you are going to help me destroy Derek Ashford. Because this time, we are going to be real partners. Or I walk away and you lose everything. Marcus felt something crack open inside his chest. It might have been his pride. It might have been his heart. He thought about the last 5 years, the emptiness, the searching, the guilt that had consumed him every single day since Victoria vanished. He had told himself he was looking for her because she was valuable, because the company needed her, because she was his employee. But that was a lie. He had been looking for her because she was the only person who had ever made him feel like he was enough. Not his money, not his company, not his success, just him. Marcus Sterling, flawed and arrogant and terrified of being ordinary. Victoria had loved him anyway, until he gave her a reason not to. Okay, he said. Victoria blinked. Okay? Okay. We are partners, real partners, equal partners. He took a breath. And when this is over, when Derek is finished and the company is safe, I am going to spend the rest of my life proving to you that I am sorry, that I see you, that I will never make you invisible again. Victoria stared at him. For a long moment, she said nothing. Then she nodded once. Okay. The word was quiet, but it carried the weight of a promise, or maybe a second chance. The police arrived then, 2 detectives in expensive suits moving through the crowd of gawking patrons. Pierre Laurent was talking rapidly, gesturing, explaining the situation in rapid-fire French-accented English. But Marcus and Victoria did not move. They stood facing each other across the wreckage of Table 12. 2 people who had built an empire together and torn it apart and might, just possibly, have a chance to build something new. Isabella was sobbing openly now, mascara running down her face, the picture of society beauty destroyed. The other diners were recording everything on their phones. This would be on social media within minutes, on the news within the hour. The scandal of the century. But Victoria did not care about the scandal. She cared about justice. She cared about the work. She cared about making sure that no one could ever erase her again. And maybe, in some small corner of her heart that she had tried very hard to kill over the last 5 years, she cared about the man standing in front of her with devastation in his eyes. The man who had just promised to see her. The real story, Victoria knew, was just beginning. The police station was nothing like the movies made it seem. There were no dramatic interrogation rooms with 2-way mirrors and harsh overhead lights. Instead, Detective Sarah Harding led Isabella Whitmore into a small conference room with fluorescent lighting that made everyone look slightly ill and a table that wobbled when you leaned on it. Isabella sat in a plastic chair that was bolted to the floor, her Dior gown looking absurd in the institutional setting. Her makeup was ruined, mascara streaked down her face in dark rivers. The $30 million engagement ring on her finger caught the fluorescent light and threw it back in weak, tired sparkles. She looked like what she was, a woman whose entire world had just collapsed. Detective Harding was 41 years old, divorced, mother of 2 teenage boys who thought they knew everything. She had been with the NYPD for 19 years and had seen every kind of crime, every kind of victim, every kind of perpetrator. She knew how to read people. And right now, she was reading Isabella Whitmore as someone who was not a criminal mastermind. She was reading her as someone who had made very bad choices for very understandable reasons. Miss Whitmore, Detective Harding began, her voice neutral and professional. Do you understand why you're here? Isabella's hands were shaking. She clasped them together to make them stop, but that only made her whole body tremble instead. I hit someone. I know, I am sorry, it was a mistake. It was assault, Miss Whitmore, in front of 60 witnesses, with video evidence. Isabella closed her eyes. When she opened them again, there were fresh tears. I know. Detective Harding leaned back in her chair. She had daughters herself, though they were younger than Isabella. But she recognized something in this woman's face. The look of someone who had been trying to hold up the world and had finally dropped it. Tell me what happened tonight. All of it. Isabella took a shuddering breath, and then, because she had nothing left to lose and no one left to protect, she told the truth. 18 months ago, my father called me home. It was late, past midnight. I was at a charity gala in the city. He said it was urgent. She paused, remembering. The detective waited. When I got there, he was in his study. He had been drinking. There was a bottle of bourbon on the desk, almost empty, and there was a revolver next to it. Detective Harding's expression did not change, but she made a note. Isabella continued, her voice getting quieter. My father is Baron Charles Whitmore. Our family has been in America since before the Revolution. We have had senators, ambassadors, business titans. My grandfather built an empire. My father was supposed to maintain it. Instead, he destroyed it. The words came faster now, like a dam breaking. The 2008 crash. My father made terrible investments. He was so certain the market would recover quickly. He leveraged everything, our properties, our portfolio, our name. And when the market did not recover the way he expected, we started drowning in debt. $2.3 billion in debt. Detective Harding whistled low. That is a lot of debt. Isabella laughed, but it was not a sound of humor. It was the laugh of someone who had been living with impossible numbers for so long, they had stopped meaning anything. My mother died 5 years ago. Cancer. The medical bills were catastrophic, even with our insurance. That was the final blow. She looked down at her hands, at the obscene diamond that represented everything wrong with her life. That night, 18 months ago, my father told me we had 6 months before everything was gone. The houses, the art, the investments, everything. He said the only thing left of value was me. How old are you, Miss Whitmore? 29. And your father asked you to marry for money. It was not a question, but Isabella answered anyway. He did not ask. He told me it was my responsibility, my duty to the family. He said the Whitmores had survived for 200 years through strategic marriages. He said I was our last hope. Isabella's voice broke. He said that if I did not do this, he would have no reason to keep living. He gestured to the revolver. He said my mother was already gone, and he had nothing left but the family name. And if that was destroyed, he would rather not see it happen. So he threatened to kill himself if you did not marry a rich man. Isabella flinched at the blunt words. When you say it like that, it sounds so calculating. Is there another way to say it? Silence. Then quietly, no, I suppose there is not. Detective Harding made another note. How did you meet Marcus Sterling? Through Derek Ashford. The name hung in the air like smoke. Tell me about Derek Ashford. Isabella took another breath. This one was even shakier than the first. Derek approached my father at our country club. This was about 1.5 years ago. He said he was a venture capitalist, an old associate of Marcus Sterling. He said he wanted to help the Whitmore family. Did he say why? Isabella shook her head. Not at first. He was charming, sophisticated. He took us to dinner at expensive restaurants. He made donations to the causes my father cared about. He made it seem like he was doing this out of genuine friendship. But he wanted something. He wanted revenge. Detective Harding leaned forward. Against Marcus Sterling. Isabella nodded. Derek told us that Marcus had stolen his work years ago, that the Prometheus algorithm, the thing that made Marcus billions, was actually built on Derek's research. He said Marcus had pushed him out of the company, destroyed his reputation, took all the credit for something Derek had created. And you believed him? Isabella met the detective's eyes for the first time. I wanted to believe him. Because if Marcus was the villain, then I was not. I was just helping to correct an injustice. I was saving my family and punishing a thief at the same time. It was a tidy narrative. Yes. Isabella's voice was bitter now. It was very tidy. Derek said all I had to do was meet Marcus, make him fall in love with me, marry him, and then give Derek access to the company's private servers. He said it was just a transfer of assets. He said no one would get hurt. Did you believe that part? Isabella was quiet for a long moment. No, I think I knew people would get hurt. I just told myself it would not be my fault. It would be Derek's fault or Marcus's fault for being arrogant enough to trust me. Anyone's fault but mine. Detective Harding studied the young woman across from her. Isabella Whitmore was not a good person. But she was not a monster either. She was someone who had been backed into a corner by circumstance and family and desperation, and who had made the wrong choice. The detective had seen it 1,000 times. Good people doing bad things because they could not see another way out. What about Victoria Hayes? Did you know who she was? No. Isabella's answer was immediate and definite. I had never heard of her. Derek never mentioned her. When she started working at La Lumiere 6 months ago, she was just another waitress to me. You treated her badly. Isabella's face flushed with shame. I treated all the staff badly. It is how I was raised. People who serve you are beneath you. You do not see them as people. She paused. But tonight, when Victoria looked at me after I hit her, I saw something in her eyes. She saw me. Really saw me. Not the dress or the ring or the name. She saw that I was empty inside, that I was a fraud, and I could not stand it. So you hit her. So I hit her. Isabella's voice was barely a whisper. I hit her because I hated that she could see the truth, that she was more real than I have ever been. There was a knock on the door. Another detective poked his head in. Harding, you are needed. Detective Harding stood. Miss Whitmore, I will be back. Do not go anywhere. It was meant as a small joke, since Isabella was not technically under arrest and was free to leave at any time. But Isabella did not smile. She just sat there in her ruined gown with her ruined makeup and her ruined life, staring at nothing. Outside the conference room, Detective Harding found Victoria Hayes waiting. Victoria had cleaned up since leaving the restaurant. Someone had given her a wet cloth to wipe the blood from where her teeth had cut her cheek. The red handprint had faded to a dull pink, but it was still visible. She wore a jacket over her waitress uniform, borrowed from one of the restaurant staff. She looked tired, but her eyes were clear. Miss Hayes, Detective Harding said, I was not expecting you to come to the station. Victoria gave a small smile. I wanted to make sure you heard the full story, not just Isabella's version. You want to press charges. It was not a question, but Victoria answered anyway. I wanted to, but now I am not sure. Detective Harding raised an eyebrow. She hit you in front of 60 people. We have video evidence. This is an easy conviction. I know. Victoria looked through the one-way window into the conference room where Isabella sat alone, crying silently. But she is not a monster. She is just a woman who made terrible choices because she felt like she had no other options. That does not excuse assault. No, Victoria agreed. It does not. But I spent 5 years being invisible because I felt like I had no other options. I understand what desperation feels like, what it does to you. Detective Harding studied Victoria with new respect. You are a better person than I would be in your position. Victoria's smile turned sad. I am not better. I am just tired of women destroying each other because men have made us believe that is the only way to survive. The detective was quiet for a moment. Then she said, Isabella is cooperating fully. She has given us everything. Names, dates, financial records. She is willing to testify against Derek Ashford and her father. Good. Victoria's voice hardened. Derek is the real threat. He has been for 7 years. Isabella was just a pawn. So what do you want to do? Press charges or not? Victoria thought about it. She thought about the slap, the humiliation, the pain. She thought about justice and revenge, and what the difference between them actually was. Not yet. Give me 24 hours to think about it. Fair enough. Detective Harding held out her hand. Victoria shook it. The detective's grip was firm, the handshake of one woman who respected another. As Victoria turned to leave, Detective Harding called after her. Miss Hayes? For what it is worth, I am glad you came back. The world needs more women who refuse to stay invisible. Victoria paused at the door. Thank you, Detective. The world also needs more women who believe other women. So thank you for that, too. She left the police station and walked out into the cold Manhattan night. It was past midnight now. The city that never sleeps was still wide awake, taxis honking and people laughing and life continuing as if the world had not just fundamentally shifted. Victoria pulled out her phone. She scrolled through her contacts to a number she had not called in 5 years. Her thumb hovered over the name. Mom! She pressed call. The phone rang twice before a woman's voice answered, thick with sleep. Hello? Mom, it is me. There was a pause. Then, Victoria. Oh, sweetheart, I saw the news. Victoria felt tears prick her eyes. She had not cried at the restaurant. She had not cried at the police station. But hearing her mother's voice, after 5 years of silence, broke something open inside her. "I am sorry," she whispered. "I am so sorry I did not call." Hush now. Elena Hayes was 58 years old, a widow who had worked 3 jobs to put her daughter through MIT and had never once complained about it. Her voice was warm and practical and filled with the kind of love that did not need explanations. "I always knew you were alive. A mother knows." "How?" "Because I know you. And I knew that if you disappeared, you had a good reason." Elena paused. Was it a good reason? Yes. Victoria found a bench on the sidewalk and sat down, not caring that it was dirty or that people were staring at the woman in a waitress uniform crying on a street corner. "I was protecting Nathan. And myself. I figured as much." Elena was silent for a moment. Victoria could hear the sound of her mother moving through her house, probably making tea. Elena always made tea when she needed to think. "Your father used to say you had his stubbornness, but my survival instinct." I think he was right. Victoria felt tears run down her face. "I miss Dad." "I know, baby, I do too, every single day." Elena's voice caught slightly, then steadied. "But you know what he told me right before he died? He said, make sure Victoria knows she does not have to be perfect. Make sure she knows she is allowed to make mistakes and come home." "I've made so many mistakes, Mom." "We all have. The question is what you do with them." Elena paused. "Tell me about Marcus Sterling. And do not give me the Forbes magazine version. Tell me the truth." Victoria almost laughed. Of course her mother would cut straight to the heart of it. "What do you want to know? Do you still love him?" The question hung in the cold air. Victoria watched a cab go by, its yellow paint bright against the dark street. She thought about Marcus's face when he recognized her. The shock, the devastation, the beginning of understanding. She thought about the way he used to bring her coffee without asking, the way he looked at her when she explained something complicated, like she was the most fascinating person in the world. "I do not know," she finally said. "I loved who I thought he was. But that person might not have ever existed. Or maybe that person did exist, and he made mistakes. Big ones, terrible ones, but mistakes nonetheless." Elena's voice was gentle. "Your father and I had our troubles. He could be proud and stubborn and infuriating. There were times I wanted to walk away." "You never told me that." "Because you were a child. You did not need to know that love is messy and complicated and sometimes painful." Elena sighed. "Your father once took credit for a community project I had organized, stood up at a town hall meeting and talked about it like it was his idea. I was sitting right there in the audience." "What did you do?" "I went home and did not speak to him for 3 days. Elena's laugh was soft and sad. On day 4, he apologized. Really apologized. Not just 'I am sorry you are upset,' but 'I was wrong. I hurt you. I will do better.' And you know what? He did. It never happened again." "Marcus erased me for 2 years, Mom. Not 3 days. 2 years. He took my work and put his name on it. He treated me like I was disposable." Yes. Elena did not argue or make excuses. He did, and that is unforgivable. But sweetheart, unforgivable does not always mean unrecoverable. The question is not whether what he did was wrong. We know it was wrong. The question is whether he can change, whether he understands what he lost, whether he is willing to do the work to earn back your trust. "I do not know if I can trust anyone again." Elena was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "I am going to tell you something I have never told anyone. After your father died, I was so angry at him. Not for dying, but for leaving me alone. For all the times he promised we would travel together when he retired. All the plans we made that would never happen. I was furious. I did not know that, because I hid it. But one night, about a year after he was gone, I was cleaning out his desk, and I found letters." Elena's voice grew thick. Letters he had written to me over the years. Letters he never sent because he was too proud or too scared. And in every single one, he apologized for taking me for granted. He wrote about how brilliant I was, how he did not deserve me, how he was going to do better. Why did he never send them? I do not know. Maybe he was ashamed. Maybe he thought actions were more important than words. But reading those letters, I realized something. He did change. He did do better. Not perfectly, not all at once, but he tried. And I had forgiven him without even realizing it because I saw him trying. Victoria closed her eyes. What if Marcus does not change? What if this is just another manipulation? Then you walk away. Elena's voice was firm. But Victoria, listen to me. You trusted yourself enough to disappear when you needed to. You trusted yourself enough to survive 5 years alone. You trusted yourself enough to come back when it was time. If you can trust yourself that much, you can trust yourself to know whether Marcus Sterling is worth a second chance. And if I'm wrong, then you will survive that too, because that is what you do. That is what I taught you. Elena's voice softened. I raised you to be strong enough to leave, and strong enough to come back, strong enough to forgive, and strong enough to walk away if you need to. Whatever you decide about Marcus, I will support you. But do not let fear of being hurt again stop you from living fully. Victoria felt something shift in her chest. Not forgiveness, not yet, but something softer than the rage that had sustained her for 5 years. How did you get so wise, Mom? By making a lot of mistakes and learning from most of them. Elena laughed softly. Now tell me about Nathan. Is he really safe? Yes, he is in New Zealand with a security team. I am going to call him tomorrow and explain everything. Good. He deserves to know the truth. And Victoria? He is going to be proud of you. We both are. For what? For running away? For surviving, for coming back, for refusing to stay invisible. Elena's voice was fierce with love. You are my daughter, and I could not be prouder of who you have become. Victoria closed her eyes. What if I'm wrong? What if I give him another chance and he hurts me again? Then you will survive again. Because that is what you do. Elena's voice was fierce with pride. You are my daughter, and my daughter does not stay down. Victoria felt something shift inside her chest. Not forgiveness, not yet, but maybe the beginning of possibility. I love you, Mom. I love you too, baby girl. Now go home, get some sleep. Tomorrow you can save the world, but tonight, you rest. They talked for a few more minutes. About Nathan, about the house in Connecticut, about small things that did not matter but mattered enormously. When Victoria finally hung up, she felt lighter. She also felt exhausted, but she had one more call to make. She dialed Marcus's number from memory. It had not changed in 5 years. She wondered if he had kept it the same, hoping she would call someday. He answered on the first ring. Victoria. Just her name, but the way he said it carried the weight of 5 years. We need to talk, not tonight, but soon. Okay. His voice was rough. Are you safe? I am safe, are you? He laughed, but it was not a happy sound. I have not been safe since you left. Good. Victoria's voice hardened. You should not feel safe. You should feel everything I felt for the last 5 years. Lost, erased, invisible. I do. Marcus's voice broke. I do feel all of that. And I am sorry. I know sorry is not enough, but I am sorry. Victoria was silent. Then, I will call you tomorrow. We have work to do. Work? Derek Ashford is still out there. And he is not going to stop just because his plan with Isabella failed. We need to stop him. Together. Together. Marcus repeated the word like it was a prayer. Yes, together. Victoria hung up without saying goodbye. She stood up from the bench and hailed a cab. As she gave the driver the address to her apartment, she thought about everything that had happened tonight. The slap, the revelation, the police, her mother, Marcus. 5 years of invisibility ended in a single night. But the story was not over, not by a long shot. Across the city, in a penthouse apartment overlooking Central Park, Marcus Sterling stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows and watched the lights of Manhattan twinkle like fallen stars. He had not slept since Victoria vanished 5 years ago. Not really. He had managed a few hours here and there, chemical sleep induced by pills prescribed by discreet doctors, but never real rest, never peace. Tonight would be no different. He poured himself a scotch, his third of the evening, and thought about the woman he had lost and found again in the space of a single night. Victoria Hayes, the smartest person he had ever met, the only person who had ever looked at him and seen past the money and the success and the carefully crafted public image, the only person who had ever made him want to be better than he was. And he had destroyed that. He had taken her brilliance and her trust and her love, and he had ground them under his heel because he was too arrogant and too insecure to share credit. His phone rang. He looked at the caller ID and felt his stomach drop. "Mom," he answered. "Hello, Mother." Catherine Sterling was 62 years old, a widow who had raised Marcus alone after his father died when Marcus was 10. She was elegant, sharp, and had a way of seeing through her son's nonsense that terrified him more than any business rival ever could. "I saw the news," she said without preamble. "Isabella Whitmore assaulted a waitress. The waitress turned out to be Victoria Hayes. You are trending on Twitter." Marcus closed his eyes. Of course he was. "Yes, Mother, I am aware. Is it true Victoria is alive?" "Yes." "Where has she been for 5 years?" "Hiding, from Derek Ashford and from me." Catherine was silent for a long moment. "Why was she hiding from you, Marcus?" "Because I hurt her. Because I took credit for her work. Because I made her feel invisible." His mother's voice went cold in the way it only did when she was deeply disappointed. "You did what your father did to me." Marcus felt like he had been slapped. "What?" "Your father." Catherine's voice was steady but sad. "He was a brilliant man, a good man in many ways, but he could never stand the idea that I was his equal. When we started the business together, it was supposed to be a partnership, but every time I had an idea, he found a way to make it his. Every time I achieved something, he found a way to diminish it." Marcus had never known this. His mother had always spoken about his father with love and respect. "I never knew." "Of course you did not. I kept it from you because I did not want you to think less of him. But Marcus, I will not make that mistake again." Catherine's voice turned sharp. "You did to Victoria exactly what your father did to me. You erased a brilliant woman because you could not handle being with someone who made you feel ordinary." "I know." Marcus's voice was barely audible. "I know, and I am sorry. Do not apologize to me. I am not the one you hurt." Catherine paused. "The question is, what are you going to do about it?" "I do not know. She is willing to work with me to stop Derek, but I do not know if she will ever forgive me." "Then you do not deserve forgiveness yet." His mother's words were brutal and true. "Marcus, I love you, but you have been an arrogant fool. And if you want Victoria Hayes back in your life, you are going to have to earn it. Not with money or grand gestures or apologies. With actions. With change. With time. What if it is not enough? What if I can never make it right?" "Then you live with that." Catherine's voice softened slightly. "But at least you will have tried. At least you will have become the man you should have been 5 years ago." They talked for a while longer, but Marcus barely heard the words. His mother's assessment echoed in his head. "You did to Victoria what your father did to me." He had spent his entire adult life trying not to be like his father, and he had failed in the worst possible way. After he hung up, Marcus sat in the dark and thought about Victoria. He thought about the way she used to explain complex theories using metaphors about cooking. He thought about the way she hummed when she coded. He thought about the night he told her he loved her, surrounded by the servers and machines they had built together. He thought about the moment he had ruined everything by choosing his ego over her dignity, and he made a decision. Tomorrow he would start making it right. He would give Victoria the credit she deserved. He would correct every patent, every interview, every lie of omission. He would make the world see what he had tried to erase. He would do it not because it would make her forgive him. He would do it because it was right. And maybe, if he was very lucky and worked very hard, someday she might trust him again. The next morning, Victoria woke up in her tiny studio apartment in Brooklyn. For a moment, she forgot everything that had happened. Then she saw the waitress uniform draped over a chair, the name tag that said Victoria S. still pinned to it, and it all came rushing back. She had stopped being invisible. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. She opened it. "Coffee? I know a place where we will not be recognized." The message included an address in Queens. It was from Isabella. Victoria stared at the message for a long moment. Then she typed back, "Okay, 1 hour." She got ready quickly, pulling on jeans and a sweater, clothes that felt strange after 6 months of wearing the same black uniform every day. She looked at herself in the mirror and barely recognized the woman looking back. Her face was her own again. Not Victoria Sanchez, invisible waitress. Victoria Hayes, the woman who had built an empire and lost it, and was beginning to build something new. The coffee shop Isabella had chosen was small and tucked into a neighborhood where society princesses never ventured. It was perfect. Isabella was already there when Victoria arrived. She had changed out of the couture gown and wore jeans and a simple sweater, her hair pulled back in a ponytail. Without the makeup and the designer clothes, She looked younger, more vulnerable. She stood when Victoria entered. Her eyes were red from crying. "Thank you for coming." Isabella's voice was hoarse. "I was not sure you would." Victoria sat down across from her. "I almost did not." A waitress brought them coffee without asking. They both wrapped their hands around the warm mugs, grateful for something to do with their hands. "I am sorry." Isabella said it quietly but with force. "I am so sorry for hitting you. For everything." Victoria studied the woman across from her. Yesterday, Isabella had been the enemy. The woman who was trying to destroy everything Victoria had built. The woman who wore a $30 million ring, while Victoria served her wine in a polyester apron. But today, Isabella just looked like what she was. A woman who had made terrible choices because she could not see another way out. "Why did you do it?" Victoria asked. "Really, not the story you told the police. The truth." Isabella took a shuddering breath. "My father was going to kill himself." She said it baldly, without embellishment, and Victoria understood immediately. "He threatened suicide if you did not marry Marcus." "Yes." Isabella's eyes filled with tears. "After my mother died, he fell apart. The debt was crushing him. And one night, he put a gun on his desk and told me that if I did not save the family, he would not be around to see it destroyed." "That is manipulation. That is abuse." "I know." Isabella wiped her eyes. "But he is still my father. And I could not stand the thought of losing him too." "So you agreed to Derek's plan." "I told myself I was helping to correct an injustice, that Marcus had stolen from Derek, and I was just helping to take back what was his." Isabella's voice was bitter. "But I knew. Deep down, I knew it was wrong." "Why the slap? Why last night?" Isabella looked at Victoria with haunted eyes. "Because you looked at me, and you saw everything I was trying to hide. You saw that I was empty, that I had sold myself for my father's approval in my family's name, and I had nothing left inside that was actually mine." She paused. "You were everything I wanted to be. Strong, brilliant, real. And I hated you for it." Victoria was silent for a moment. Then she said, "I was not strong. I ran away. I hid for 5 years." "You survived. That takes strength." "So did you." Victoria's voice was firm. "You are cooperating with the police. You are telling the truth. You are breaking the cycle. That takes strength too." Isabella looked surprised. "You do not hate me?" "I do not know you well enough to hate you." Victoria's smile was sad. "But I know what it is like to feel like you have no choices. To feel like the only way to survive is to disappear." "I made you disappear. I slapped you in front of 60 people and tried to erase you." "Yes, you did." Victoria's voice hardened. "And that is unforgivable. But it is also understandable. How can both things be true? Because people are complicated. Because you can do a terrible thing for understandable reasons and still have to face the consequences." Victoria leaned forward. "You hurt me. You humiliated me. And I will never forget that. But I also see that you were hurt first. By your father, by Derek, by a system that taught you your only value was in who you married. So what now? Now you testify against Derek. You help us stop him. You make amends. And maybe, eventually, you figure out who Isabella Whitmore is when she is not trying to save her father or impress society, or be someone she is not." Isabella was crying openly now. "Why are you being kind to me? I do not deserve it." Victoria thought about her mother's words from last night, about surviving, about trusting yourself, about knowing that you could weather whatever came next. "Because I am tired of women destroying each other," Victoria said. "Because the patriarchy wants us to fight over scraps while men hoard power. Because Derek Ashford and your father and Marcus Sterling all made choices that hurt both of us. And maybe it is time we stop letting them." Isabella stared at her, then quietly. "What do you want from me?" "I want you to tell the truth. About Derek, about your father, about everything. I want you to help us bring Derek down." Victoria paused. "And after this is over, when the dust settles, I want you to work with me." "Work with you?" "I am going to rebuild Sterling Innovations. Not just the technology, but the culture, the ethics. I am going to make sure that what happened to me never happens to another woman." Victoria met Isabella's eyes. "And I want someone on my ethics board who understands what it costs to make bad choices, who can see the warning signs before someone else gets hurt." "You want me to work for you, after everything?" I want you to work with me. There is a difference. Isabella was silent for a long time. Then she said, I do not know if I can ever make this right. You cannot. Victoria's voice was gentle but firm. You can only do better going forward. That is all any of us can do. They sat in silence for a moment, two women who had been on opposite sides of a war they had not chosen. Two women who were beginning to understand that they had more in common than they had thought. There is something else you should know, Isabella said finally. Derek is not done. What do you mean? He sent me a message this morning before I turned off my phone. He knows I talked to the police. He knows his plan failed, and he is angry. Victoria felt a chill run down her spine. What did the message say? Isabella pulled out her phone and showed Victoria. The message was short and simple. You had 72 hours to get me access. Now you have 72 hours to watch everything burn. Victoria's blood ran cold. He is going to release the Pandora files. The what? Victoria sat back down heavily. The Pandora protocols. Algorithms Marcus and I built years ago. They were designed to predict catastrophes before they happened. Model disease spread, infrastructure vulnerabilities, chemical compound interactions. We never connected them to the main Prometheus system because they were too powerful, too dangerous. And Derek has them. If he had full access to Sterling servers, he would. But there is more, is there not? Victoria studied Isabella's face. You are not telling me everything. Telling me. Isabella looked away. Derek mentioned buyers. Last week, when he called my father. He said he had 12 confirmed buyers waiting. 12! Victoria felt sick. Who? I do not know specifics. But Derek said they were offering 8 figures each. He said once he made the sales, he would have enough capital to buy Sterling Innovations outright. She paused. He called it poetic justice, taking Marcus's company with money earned from selling Marcus's own technology. This is not corporate espionage anymore. This is terrorism. The words seemed to hang in the air between them, heavy and undeniable. Isabella's face went even paler. I did not know. You have to believe me. I thought it was just business secrets, financial data. I did not know he had weaponized code that could kill people. You did not ask. Victoria's voice was hard. No. Isabella's whisper was barely audible. I did not ask because I did not want to know. Because if I knew, I would have had to admit I was helping someone evil. And then I would have had to choose between my father and doing the right thing. And you would have chosen your father. Yes, the admission came out broken. I would have chosen my father, because I am a coward. Victoria studied the woman across from her. She wanted to feel rage. She wanted to hate Isabella for her weakness, her complicity, her willingness to sacrifice others for family. But all she felt was tired sadness. We are all cowards sometimes, Victoria said finally. The question is what we do when we finally find our courage. Isabella looked up, tears streaming down her face. What can I do? How can I possibly fix this? Tell me everything you know about Derek's operation. Every detail, no matter how small, every conversation you overheard, every location your father mentioned. Everything. And Isabella did. She talked about phone calls she had eavesdropped on, about a facility upstate that Derek had mentioned once, an old IBM research center from the Cold War, about encrypted messaging apps and shell companies and wire transfers to offshore accounts. She talked until her voice was hoarse and her coffee was cold, and Victoria had filled 3 pages in her notebook with details that might, if they were very lucky, be enough to stop a catastrophe. When Isabella finally fell silent, Victoria looked at her notes. It was not much, but it was something. Does Derek know where you are right now? I do not think so. I left my regular phone at home. I have been using a burner. Good. Keep it that way. Victoria stood. We need to get you to a safe location. Somewhere Derek cannot find you. Why would he look for me? I am useless to him now. Because you talked to the police. Because you know too much. Victoria met her eyes. Because men like Derek do not leave loose ends. Isabella's hand went to her throat. You think he would hurt me? I think he threatened to kill my brother to keep me quiet. Yes, I think he would hurt you. The fear in Isabella's eyes was real and raw. Where can I go? Victoria pulled out her phone. I know someone who can help. But, Isabella, if you run now, you have to commit. You cannot go back to your father. You cannot try to fix things with him. You cannot warn him about what is coming. He is my father, and he was willing to sell you to save himself. Victoria's voice was gentle but firm. Sometimes the people who should protect us are the ones who hurt us most. You do not owe him your safety. Isabella was crying again, but she nodded. Okay, okay, I will go. Victoria made 2 calls. The first was to Detective Harding, arranging for Isabella to be placed in protective custody. The second was to Marcus. He answered before the first ring finished. Victoria. His voice carried 5 years of longing in a single word. Derek sent Isabella a threat. He says he is going to release something in 72 hours. Marcus's voice was tight. The Pandora protocols. You know about them? I know that when you and I built Prometheus, we also built safeguards. Algorithms that could predict and prevent disasters. But we never connected them to the main system because they were too dangerous. Victoria's hands were shaking. Derek has access to them. If he releases those algorithms to the wrong people, they could engineer pandemics, collapse infrastructure, create weapons we cannot even imagine yet. Marcus paused. Victoria, this is not just about the company anymore. This is about lives. I know Victoria's mind was already racing, running through possibilities and countermeasures. We need to meet, assemble the team. We have 72 hours to find Derek and stop him. I will call everyone. Marcus hesitated. Victoria, I need you to know something. Not now, Marcus. No, now. Because if we only have 72 hours, I need you to hear this. His voice was raw. I still love you. I have never stopped loving you. And I know I do not deserve a second chance. I know I hurt you in ways that cannot be undone. But I need you to know that finding you again is the only thing that matters to me. More than the company. More than my reputation, more than anything. Victoria stood in the middle of the coffee shop with Isabella watching her and strangers at other tables, oblivious to the fact that the world might be about to end, and felt her heart crack open. That is not enough, Marcus. I know. Love is easy, trust is hard. You erased me once. How do I know you will not do it again? You do not. But I will spend the rest of my life proving you can trust me, starting now, starting with stopping Derek. Together. Victoria closed her eyes. She thought about her mother's words, about knowing whether someone could change, about trusting herself to weather whatever came next. Okay, together. But Marcus, if you ever erase me again, if you ever take credit for my work or treat me like I am less than your equal, I will destroy you myself. Do you understand? I understand. And Victoria, I would not blame you. Good. Now stop talking about feelings and start working. We have 72 hours to save the world. She hung up and turned to Isabella, who was staring at her with something like awe. What? Victoria asked. You just told a billionaire you would destroy him. Victoria smiled, and it was not a nice smile. It was the smile of a woman who had spent 5 years being invisible and was never going to be erased again. I built him once. I can break him just as easily. She sat back down. Now tell me everything you know about Derek Ashford. Every conversation, every meeting, every detail. We are going to find him. And we are going to stop him. Isabella nodded and began to talk. And Victoria listened, her mind already assembling pieces of a puzzle that would take 72 hours to solve. Outside, the morning sun rose over Queens, indifferent to the drama unfolding in a small coffee shop. The city woke up and went to work, unaware that somewhere in the digital shadows, a countdown had begun. 72 hours until Derek Ashford unleashed chaos. 72 hours until the world learned what happened when you erased a brilliant woman and she came back for justice. 72 hours until Victoria Hayes proved that invisible women see everything and remember everything, and eventually make everyone else see too. The war room at Sterling Innovations occupied the entire 78th floor of the building Marcus had named after himself. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked Manhattan, like a god surveying his kingdom. And in the center of the room stood a conference table carved from a single piece of black walnut that had cost more than most people earned in a year. Victoria had helped design this room 6 years ago. She had chosen the ergonomic chairs, specified the screen resolution, insisted on the coffee machine that ground beans fresh for every cup. She had worked in this room for 2 years, building an empire, and then she had vanished, and Marcus had kept everything exactly as she left it. Walking back in felt like stepping into a tomb of her former self. It was 3 a.m. The city below glittered with lights that never slept, and inside the war room, a team was assembling that had not been together in 5 years. Dr. James Chen arrived first. He was 42 now, though he looked older, his hair graying at the temples in a way that made him look distinguished rather than tired. He had been Victoria's second in command when they built Prometheus, the person she trusted to catch her mistakes and challenge her assumptions. When he saw her, he stopped in the doorway. "Victoria." He said it like a prayer, like a man who had spent 5 years mourning someone and suddenly found them alive. "Is it really you?" She smiled. "It is really me, James." He crossed the room in 3 long strides and pulled her into a hug that lifted her off her feet. She let herself be hugged, let herself feel the warmth of being remembered, being missed, being real to someone who had known her before she became invisible. When he set her down, there were tears in his eyes. "We thought you were dead. Marcus spent millions looking for you. We all looked." "I know." Victoria's voice was soft. "I am sorry I could not tell you. But I had good reasons." "You always have good reasons." James smiled through his tears. "But Victoria, never do that again. The world needs you too much." The rest of the team filtered in over the next hour. Priya Kapoor, the quantum cryptography expert who had helped secure Prometheus against external threats, arrived with her hair still wet from a shower and her eyes red from crying. When she saw Victoria, she froze in the doorway. "Oh my God, it is really you." She crossed the room in a rush and hugged Victoria so hard it hurt. "I thought you were dead. We all thought you were dead. Do you know how many nights I sat in this room trying to figure out what happened to you?" Victoria held her tight. "I am sorry. I am so sorry." "Do not apologize for surviving." Priya pulled back, wiping her eyes. "Just promise you will never disappear like that again. The world needs you, we need you." Alex Torres came next, the network specialist whose talent for tracing data through complex systems had been essential to building Prometheus's security architecture. He was 35 now, though the lines around his eyes made him look older. He had loved Victoria once, in the quiet way of a colleague who knew better than to speak it aloud. When he saw her, he simply smiled. "Knew you were not dead. Told everyone. They said I was in denial." "You were right." Victoria smiled back. "Thank you for believing in me." "Always." Alex's smile faded. "But Victoria, if you disappear again, I will find you myself. And I will drag you back. Because this team does not work without you." The others arrived in waves. Some cried. Some hugged her. Some just stared like they were seeing a ghost made flesh. Every reunion was a reminder of the connections she had severed when she vanished. Every face was a person who had mourned her. By the time the team was assembled, Victoria felt the weight of their faith in her like a physical thing. These people had continued working after she disappeared. They had kept building, kept innovating, kept pushing Prometheus forward, not because Marcus told them to, because they believed in the work, because they believed in her. And she had abandoned them. "I owe all of you an explanation," Victoria said when everyone was seated. "But first, we have work to do. After we stop Derek, after the world is safe, I will tell you everything. I will answer every question. But right now, I need you to trust me one more time." Dr. Chen stood. "We trust you, Victoria. We always have." One by one, the rest of the team stood. A silent affirmation, a vote of confidence, a declaration that the woman who had been erased was now leading them again. Victoria looked at each face. James Chen, who had been her second in command. Priya Kapoor, who had pushed her to think bigger about security. Alex Torres, who had challenged every assumption. And the others, 12 brilliant minds who had chosen to stay with Sterling Innovations even after she left. They had stayed because of the work, but also, she realized, because of each other. They had formed a family in her absence, and now she was asking them to risk everything for her again. "Thank you," she said simply. "Let us save the world." "Thank you for coming," he said. His voice was rough with exhaustion and emotion. "All of you. I know it is the middle of the night. I know this is unprecedented. But we have 70 hours left to stop something catastrophic." He looked at Victoria. She nodded. "Tell them," she said. So Marcus told them. About Derek Ashford. About the backdoor code that had been bleeding Sterling Innovations for 7 years. About the Pandora protocols, the algorithms designed to prevent disasters that Derek was planning to weaponize and sell to the highest bidders. About the 12 confirmed buyers waiting to purchase code that could engineer pandemics, collapse infrastructure, and create weapons that made nuclear bombs look primitive. When he finished, the room was silent. Dr. Chen spoke first. "How do we stop him?" We find him. Victoria stepped forward, and suddenly the room's attention shifted to her. Marcus noticed but said nothing. We trace his operation through financial records, through Isabella's testimony, through any digital footprint he left. We locate his facility, and we shut him down. Priya raised her hand. With respect, Victoria, if Derek has the Pandora codes, he will have protected himself. Multiple layers of security, possibly even dead man switches that release the codes if we interfere. I know. Victoria's smile was grim. I wrote half those security protocols. I know exactly how Derek thinks because I taught him how to think when we built the original systems. Alex Torres leaned forward. What do you need from us? Everything. Victoria pulled up a screen, and suddenly the wall behind her lit up with data. Financial transactions, shell company registrations, property records. I need forensic accountants tracing money. I need network specialists tracking server activity. I need cryptographers breaking encrypted communications. She paused, looking at each face in turn. And I need all of you to trust me. I have been gone for 5 years. I vanished without explanation. I know that hurt all of you, but I need you to believe that I am back now, and I am going to finish what Derek started. Dr. Chen stood. We trust you, Victoria. We always have. One by one, the rest of the team stood. A silent affirmation, a vote of confidence, a declaration that the woman who had been erased was now leading them again. Marcus watched from his position at the side of the room, not at the head of the table, not in charge, supporting Victoria's leadership instead of competing with it. It was such a small thing, but Victoria noticed, and she felt something soften in her chest. The next 18 hours were a blur of coffee and computer screens and data analysis. The team worked in shifts, but Victoria barely slept. She moved through the war room like a conductor, coordinating efforts and making connections no one else could see. At hour 12, Priya found a shell company that had purchased server equipment. It traced back to Baron Whitmore. At hour 16, Alex tracked power consumption spikes at an old IBM facility in upstate New York, purchased through the same shell company. At hour 18, they had a location, a physical address in the Catskill Mountains. Victoria stood in front of the assembled map. We need to call the FBI, Dr. Chen said. Already done. Marcus was on his phone. Director Vaughn is sending a tactical team. They will be ready in 24 hours. Victoria shook her head. Too long. We have 52 hours left. If Derek realizes we found him, he will accelerate the timeline. We need to move now. Marcus looked at her. The FBI will not authorize a raid without proper planning, and we cannot go in ourselves. It is too dangerous. When has danger ever stopped us? Victoria's smile was sharp. We built Prometheus in your parents' garage while we ate ramen and slept on the floor. We have faced down competitors and investors and board members who said we would fail. You think I am going to let Derek Ashford scare me now? This is different. Marcus's voice was strained. He has 12 buyers waiting for weapons. He might have physical security. He might have contingencies. Victoria, I cannot lose you again. The room went very quiet. Victoria looked at Marcus, really looked at him. She saw the fear in his eyes, the desperation, the love he had confessed over the phone, but had not repeated in person. You will not lose me, she said quietly, but you need to trust me to do what needs to be done. I do trust you. Marcus's voice broke. That is why I am afraid. Before Victoria could respond, her phone rang. The number was blocked, but she answered anyway. Hello? A voice she had not heard in 5 years spoke. Cold, cultured, faintly amused. Victoria Hayes. Or should I call you Victoria Sanchez? I hear you have been serving wine at expensive restaurants. How the mighty have fallen. Derek? The room erupted. Marcus was on his feet. Dr. Chen was pulling up trace software. Alex was already trying to pinpoint the call's origin. But Victoria held up her hand for silence. Derek Ashford, I was wondering when you would call. Were you? Derek's laugh was soft and dangerous. I thought you would be too busy playing detective with Marcus's little team. Though I must say I am impressed. 18 hours to find my facility. You have not lost your edge. How did you know? Because I have been watching, Victoria. I have always been watching. Derek's voice hardened. Do you know how long I have waited for this moment? 7 years. 7 years of planning, of patience, of watching Marcus Sterling take credit for work that was never his. It was his work, Derek. He built Sterling Innovations. With my code, with my initial algorithms, with my capital. Derek's voice rose. I gave him the foundation, and he built a skyscraper and put his name on it. You tried to steal the company. You embezzled funds. Marcus had every right to push you out. Did he? Derek's laugh was bitter. Or did he see an opportunity to eliminate a partner who made him uncomfortable? Someone smarter than him, someone who challenged him. Victoria felt ice in her veins. You are describing yourself, Derek, not Marcus. Am I? Because from where I stand, Victoria, we have a lot in common. We were both erased. We both had our brilliance attributed to someone else. We both disappeared because Marcus Sterling could not handle sharing the spotlight. I disappeared because you threatened my brother. And why did I threaten your brother? Because you were going to expose me. Because you were loyal to Marcus even when he was stealing credit for your work. Derek's voice turned silky. Tell me, Victoria. When you built Prometheus, whose name went on the patents? Victoria's silence was answer enough. Exactly, Derek continued. So before you cast me as the villain and Marcus as the hero, remember that we are all just people making choices. Some of us choose to accept being erased. Others choose to fight back. By selling weapons to terrorists, by threatening to release code that could kill millions. That is not fighting back, Derek. That is terrorism. Terrorism. Such an ugly word. Derek sighed. I prefer to think of it as market forces. I have something valuable. Other people want to buy it. It is just capitalism, Victoria. It is evil. Evil is subjective. Derek's tone turned cold. But I will tell you what is not subjective. I have 51 hours left on my deadline, and when those hours are up, the Pandora codes go to the highest bidders. Unless, of course, someone stops me. We will stop you. Will you? Because I have seen your team assembling. I have watched your frantic research. I know you found my facility. And I am telling you right now, if you come for me, people will die. Victoria's hand tightened on the phone. What do you mean? The facility is rigged. Every server, every room, every exit. If anyone tries to shut me down by force, the building goes up in flames. And not just flames, chemical fire. The kind that melts steel and bone. You are bluffing. Am I? Derek laughed. There is only one way to find out. Come to my facility, Victoria. Come alone. We will talk. And maybe, just maybe, I will give you a chance to stop this. Why would you do that? Because despite everything, I respect you. You and I, we are the same. We are the ones who do the work while others take the glory. Derek paused. Come alone. Noon tomorrow. And Victoria? If I see Marcus, if I see the FBI, if I see anyone but you, I detonate the building and I release the codes immediately. The line went dead. Victoria stood holding the phone, her mind racing. Around her, the war room erupted into chaos. He is lying, Marcus said immediately. This is a trap. You cannot go alone. Alex was typing furiously. I almost had the trace. Another 30 seconds, and I would have pinpointed his exact location within the facility. It does not matter. Victoria set down her phone. We already know where he is. The question is how to get to him without triggering whatever defenses he has in place. You are not seriously considering going alone. Marcus's voice was rising. Victoria, he could kill you. Or he could give me access to shut down the Pandora release. Victoria met his eyes. We have 51 hours. The FBI needs 24 just to plan the raid. We do not have time for safe options. Then I go with you? No. Victoria's voice was firm. He was very clear. If he sees you, people die. If he sees the FBI, people die. This is not negotiable, Marcus. So what? You just walk into a building rigged with explosives and trust that a man who tried to have your brother killed will negotiate in good faith. Yes. Victoria's smile was grim. Because Derek wants something more than money. He wants validation. He wants someone to acknowledge that he was wronged. And right now, I am the only person who can give him that. By lying to him? By telling him the truth. Victoria looked around the room at the assembled team. Derek was wronged, not in the way he thinks. Not by Marcus stealing his work, but by a system that values ego over collaboration, that rewards individual genius over partnership, that erases the people who build the foundations so the people at the top can take all the credit. She turned back to Marcus. He was wronged the same way I was wronged. the same way your mother was wronged by your father, the same way countless brilliant women and men have been wronged by partners who could not share the spotlight. So you are saying he is right? I am saying he is hurt. And hurt people do terrible things when they feel like no one sees their pain. Victoria's voice softened. I am not excusing what he is doing. I am saying I understand it. And that understanding might be the only leverage I have. The room was silent. Then Priya spoke up. If you are going alone, at least take this. She held up a small device, barely larger than a button. Tracking beacon. We will know exactly where you are at all times. And if anything goes wrong, we can send help. Victoria took the device. Thank you. And this. Dr. Chen handed her a phone. Encrypted. Direct line to this room. If you need us, we will be there. Victoria pocketed the phone and the beacon. Then she looked at Marcus. If I do not come back, she began. You will come back. Marcus's voice was fierce. You will come back because you are Victoria Hayes and you do not stay down. You will come back because we have work to finish. And you will come back because I have spent 5 years waiting for you. And I am not losing you now. He crossed the room and took her hands. His grip was tight, almost desperate. When you come back, when this is over, I am going to ask you to marry me. Not because I want to own you or control you or put my name on your work, but because I want to spend the rest of my life making up for the years I wasted being too arrogant to see what I had. Victoria felt tears prick her eyes. Marcus, you do not have to answer now. You do not have to answer ever if you do not want to. But I needed you to know, before you walk into danger, before you face Derek alone, I needed you to know that I love you, and I will love you whether you forgive me or not, whether you come back to me or not, whether you ever trust me again or not. He let go of her hands. Now go. Save the world. Come back to me. And we will figure out the rest. Victoria looked at him. This man who had erased her. This man who had spent $100 million searching for her. This man who was finally learning to make space for someone else to shine. I will come back, she said. And when I do, ask me again. Then she turned and walked out of the war room, leaving Marcus and the team and the safety of the place she had built behind. The drive to the Catskills took 3 hours through pre-dawn darkness. Victoria drove alone in a rental car, following GPS coordinates to a facility that had not appeared on any map since 1994. As Victoria drove, her phone rang. Not the encrypted line, her personal cell. The voice was female, refined, British inflected. My name is Grace Ashford. I believe you are on your way to see my ex-husband. Victoria nearly drove off the road. She pulled over. How did you get this number? The same way I know your mother's name and your brother's location. Grace's voice was dry. I was married to Derek for 8 years. I learned his methods. What do you want? To warn you. Derek does not just want recognition, he wants revenge. And he will destroy anyone in his path, including himself. Grace paused. That is why I divorced him. Because the brilliant scientist I married became a monster who threatened our daughter. Victoria pulled out her notebook. Tell me about the early days. We were never partners. That was the problem. Grace's laugh was bitter. No matter how much work I did, Derek always made sure his name came first. He erased me the same way Marcus erased you. So when Derek saw Marcus do the same to me, what did he say? He said, at least Sterling learned from the best. Grace's voice was hard. He saw it as validation, that the strong take credit and the weak accept it. Then what do I appeal to? His ego? Exactly. Make him feel important. Acknowledge that he was wronged. And he might let you live long enough to stop him. Grace's voice softened. Derek loved me once, before bitterness consumed him. If you see any trace of that man, try to reach him, because that man would never hurt anyone. And if I do not see that man, then do whatever you have to do to stop the monster he became. The call ended. Victoria sat in her car on the side of a mountain road as the sun began to rise over the Catskills. She thought about Grace Ashford, about Catherine Sterling, about her own mother Elena, about all the brilliant women who had been erased by the men they loved. And she thought about Derek Ashford, not as a villain, not as a terrorist, but as a man who had been hurt so deeply that he had forgotten how to be human. She started the car and continued driving. The facility appeared around a curve like something out of a Cold War nightmare. concrete and steel, windowless and imposing, built into the side of a mountain with the kind of architecture that said, "This place has secrets." Victoria parked in the empty lot and got out. The air was cold and thin, and her breath misted in the morning light. She checked her phone, 10 minutes to noon. She activated the tracking beacon Priya had given her, checked that the encrypted phone line was open, and then she walked toward the only visible entrance, a steel door with a numeric keypad. Before she could knock, the door opened. Derek Ashford stood in the doorway. He was 42 years old, with silver hair that made him look distinguished and cold blue eyes that made him look dangerous. He wore an expensive suit, perfectly tailored, and he smiled like a man greeting an old friend. "Victoria Hayes, welcome to my kingdom." He gestured inside. "Please, I have been waiting for you." Victoria stepped through the door. It closed behind her with a sound like a tomb ceiling. The interior of the facility was not what she expected. Instead of the utilitarian concrete corridors of a research center, she found herself in something that looked like a luxury apartment. Hardwood floors, modern furniture, walls lined with servers that hummed softly. Derek led her to a sitting area with leather chairs and a coffee table. On the table sat 2 cups and a French press full of coffee. "I know you take it black," he said. "No sugar. You used to say that coffee should taste like coffee, not like dessert. You have been watching me for 5 years. Derek poured 2 cups. "I knew you were not dead. Everyone else thought you had been kidnapped or killed or had some kind of breakdown, but I knew better. I knew you were hiding. From you, from me, from Marcus, from a world that did not appreciate what you had built." Derek handed her a cup. "We are not so different, you and I. We are nothing alike. Are we not?" Derek smiled. "We both disappeared after being erased. We both hid from the men who stole our work. The only difference is I came back for revenge and you came back for redemption. There is a rather large difference between those 2 things. Is there?" Derek leaned back in his chair. "Tell me, Victoria, when you stood in that restaurant and let Isabella Whitmore slap you, what were you really doing?" "I was exposing her." "You were manipulating her. You timed that wine spill perfectly. You knew she would react. You orchestrated your own humiliation because you knew it would give you power." Derek's eyes gleamed. "That is not redemption. That is revenge, dressed up in prettier clothes." Victoria felt a chill. He was not wrong. "So here we are." Derek gestured around the room. 2 brilliant minds, erased by the same man, seeking justice in our own ways. I think we should work together. Work together to sell weapons to terrorists. Work together to destroy Marcus Sterling's empire and build something better." Derek leaned forward. "I have the Pandora codes. You have the knowledge to weaponize them properly. Together, we could be unstoppable." "I would never help you hurt people. People get hurt every day, Victoria. The question is whether we control who gets hurt, or whether we let men like Marcus Sterling control it." Derek's voice hardened. "He stole from both of us. He erased both of us. And he is going to keep doing it to others unless someone stops him. So stop him. Expose him. Go public with the truth. But do not sell weapons that could kill millions." "The buyers are not going to kill millions." Derek waved his hand dismissively. "They are going to use the codes for leverage, for power, for the same things every government and corporation uses technology for. You do not know that." "I do not care." Derek's mask slipped just for a moment. Victoria saw beneath it, saw the rage and the pain and the desperate need to be seen. "I spent 7 years invisible. 7 years watching Marcus Sterling get credit for my work. 7 years being forgotten." She took a breath. "Then let me see you now. Let me acknowledge what was done to you. You were wronged, Derek. Marcus did take credit for your initial algorithms. He did push you out. He did erase your contributions." Derek's eyes widened slightly. "You admit it." "I admit it, just like I admit he did the same to me." Victoria set down her coffee cup. "But Derek, there is a difference between acknowledging wrong and justifying evil. What Marcus did was wrong. What you are doing is worse." "How dare you?" Derek stood. "I am trying to correct an injustice by perpetuating 1,000 others." Victoria stood as well. "You want to be remembered as a genius? Then act like one. Geniuses build, they create. They make the world better. Monsters destroy." "I'm not a monster." "Then prove it. Give me the Pandora codes. Help me shut down the sale. Work with me to expose Marcus properly, through legal means, through truth. And what do I get in return?" "Recognition." a place in history as the man who helped create Prometheus and who stopped a catastrophe. Victoria stepped closer. Legacy, Derek, is that not what you really want? To be remembered? For a moment, just a moment, she saw something shift in his eyes. The rage flickered. The man Grace had described, the one who wanted to save the world, appeared. He looked younger suddenly, vulnerable, like the scientist who had once believed that brilliance could change everything. Then the moment passed. The walls went back up. The rage returned, harder than before. You think you can manipulate me with words? Derek's laugh was harsh and ugly. You think because you understand what it feels like to be erased, that you understand me? You do not know anything about what I have lost. Then tell me. Victoria kept her voice steady. Tell me what happened. Not the corporate version, not the story you tell yourself to justify this. The real story. Derek turned away from her. He walked to one of the server racks, his hand resting on the humming metal like a man touching a gravestone. I met Grace in graduate school, Cambridge. She was the smartest person in our program, smarter than me, if I'm being honest. He laughed bitterly. We fell in love over differential equations and bad coffee. We got married the day after graduation. We were going to change the world together, partners in everything. What happened? Life, academia, tenure. Derek's voice was flat. Every paper we published together, the department head asked whose idea it was. Every grant we applied for, the review board wanted to know who the primary investigator was. They could not conceive of a true collaboration. Someone had to be the leader. Someone had to be the assistant. And you made yourself the leader. I did not make myself anything. The system made me the leader, because I was the man and Grace was the woman. And that was how things worked. Derek's shoulders sagged. I told myself I was protecting her, that I was shielding her from bias, that once we were established, once we had credibility, I would share credit properly. But you never did. No, I never did. Because the more credit I took, the more the world gave me. Awards, speaking engagements, job offers. And the more I accepted, the easier it became to forget that half the brilliance was Grace's. Until she left you. Until she left me. Derek's voice cracked. She took our daughter and disappeared, just like you did. And I spent years telling myself she was ungrateful, that she had betrayed me, that I was the victim. When did you realize you were wrong? When I saw Marcus do the same thing to you. Derek turned back to face her. When I watched him erase your name from patents. When I saw him take credit for your code. When I recognized myself in him and hated what I saw. So this was never about justice. This was about punishment. Yes, Derek's admission was raw. I wanted Marcus to feel what I felt when Grace left, when our daughter stopped answering my calls, when I looked in the mirror and saw a man who had destroyed everything he loved because he was too proud to share. The anger is eating you alive, is it not? Derek nodded slowly. Every day, every hour. It is like acid in my veins. I wake up angry. I go to sleep angry. I dream about revenge and wake up more empty than before. You cannot sell those codes, Derek, not because it is illegal or immoral, though it is both, but because it will not make the anger stop. It will only prove to yourself that you have become the monster Grace left. I am already a monster. No. Victoria shook her head. Monsters do not call for help. And that is what you did when you asked me to come here. You're in so much pain that you do not know how to stop yourself. You are hoping someone else will. You are giving me too much credit. Maybe. Or maybe I am seeing the man Grace fell in love with. The one who believes science could save lives. The one who cried when their daughter was born, because he could not believe something so perfect could exist. Derek's eyes widened. How do you know that? Grace told me. She called me this morning. She wanted me to know that you were not always like this, that once you were good. She called you. Derek's voice was barely a whisper. After 3 years, she called you to save me. She called me to save you from yourself. Victoria stepped closer. She still loves you, Derek. Not the man you became, but the man you were. The man you could be again if you chose. I do not deserve her love. Maybe not, but your daughter deserves a father who is not in prison for terrorism. And the world deserves the brilliant scientist you could still be. It is too late. It is never too late to stop, to choose differently, to acknowledge the hurt you have caused and start making amends. Victoria's voice was fierce now. I spent 5 years invisible because I was afraid. Afraid of Derek Ashford, the threat. But standing here now, I am not afraid anymore. Because I see Derek Ashford, the broken human being who is capable of being better. I am not trying to debug you. I am trying to save you. Not from justice or consequences or accountability, but from the prison you have built inside yourself. Save me? Derek's voice rose, but it was not anger now. It was desperation. I do not need saving, I need justice. And if you will not help me get it, then you can burn with Marcus's empire. But his hand shook as he raised the dead man switch, and Victoria knew she had him. He pulled something from his pocket, a dead man switch. Simple, elegant, deadly. One press, and the facility explodes. One press, and the Pandora codes released to all 12 buyers simultaneously. One press, and you die here with me. Victoria looked at the switch, then at Derek, and she did something he did not expect. She smiled. Do it, she said. Derek froze. What? Press the button, release the codes, burn it all down. Victoria took a step toward him. If that is truly who you are, if you are really willing to kill millions for your ego, then do it now. You are bluffing. I am not. Victoria's voice was calm. Because, Derek, here is what I realized. You do not want to destroy the world. You want someone to stop you. You want someone to see that you are in pain and help you. That is why you called me. That is why you asked me to come alone. She took another step. That is why you are hesitating right now instead of pressing that button. Derek's hand shook. You do not know anything about me. I know everything about you. Because I am you. Victoria's voice broke. I am the person who was erased, who disappeared, who spent years invisible and angry and desperate for someone, anyone, to acknowledge the wrong that was done. Tears were streaming down her face now. I know what it costs to be unseen. I know how it eats away at you until you stop recognizing yourself. I know how easy it is to justify terrible things when you are hurt. She was directly in front of him now, close enough to touch. But I also know that the way back from that darkness is not through more destruction. It is through being seen, really seen, not as a victim or a villain, but as a person who is hurt and who deserves better. Derek was crying too. His hand still held the switch, but it had stopped shaking. I just wanted them to know, he whispered. I just wanted the world to know that I mattered. You matter. Victoria took his hand gently, the one not holding the switch. You matter to Grace. You matter to your daughter. You matter to the world that needs brilliant minds like yours. She squeezed his hand. And you matter to me. Because I see you, Derek. I see the man you could have been. I see the pain that made you into this. And I am asking you, please, do not let that pain destroy you. For a long moment they stood there. Two people who had been erased. Two people who had vanished. Two people who had come back from invisibility. One seeking redemption and one seeking revenge. Derek looked at the switch in his hand, then at Victoria. Then slowly, so slowly, he let it fall. It clattered on the hardwood floor between them. Victoria picked it up carefully and disabled it with the expertise of someone who had designed similar systems. Then she put her arms around Derek Ashford and let him cry. Outside, miles away, the war room erupted in cheers. The tracking beacon had transmitted everything. The FBI tactical team was moving in. Marcus had already called Director Vaughn with coordinates and evidence. But Victoria did not think about any of that. She just held a broken man and thought about Grace and Catherine and Elena and all the women who had ever been made invisible. And she thought about how the hardest thing in the world was not defeating your enemies. It was recognizing that they were human too. Derek Ashford was arrested an hour later. He did not resist. He handed over the Pandora codes, gave full access to his servers, provided the names of all 12 buyers. He cooperated completely. And when the FBI let him out in handcuffs, he looked back at Victoria one last time. Thank you, he said, for seeing me. She nodded. Get help, Derek. Real help. And maybe someday you can build something good again. Then he was gone. Victoria stood alone for a moment in the empty facility. The servers hummed softly, oblivious to the fact that they had almost been used to destroy the world. She pulled out her phone, hands shaking, and made a call she had been waiting 5 years to make. The phone rang 3 times. Then a voice answered, hesitant and uncertain. Hello? Nathan. Victoria's voice broke on his name. It is me. The silence on the other end was absolute, then quietly, filled with 5 years of confusion and hurt and desperate hope. Tori? She had not heard that nickname in so long. Only Nathan had ever called her that. Only her little brother, who used to follow her around their childhood home asking questions about everything. Who had believed her when she said she had to disappear for work? "I am so sorry," she whispered. "I am so sorry I left you. I am so sorry I lied." "Are you okay?" Nathan's voice was thick. "Are you safe? Where are you?" "I am safe. The threat is gone. Derek Ashford is in custody. You can come home now." Home. Nathan repeated the word like he was testing its weight. "I have been in New Zealand for 5 years, Tori. I have a life here, friends, a job. I thought you were dead or in witness protection or working on something so classified you could never tell me." "I know, and I will explain everything." Victoria wiped her eyes. "But Nathan, I need you to know that everything I did was to protect you. Derek threatened you. He had footage of you. He knew where you lived. He was going to hurt you if I did not disappear." "Why did you not tell me?" "Because you would have tried to help. And then we both would have been targets." Victoria took a shaky breath. "I sent you away to keep you safe, and I vanished to take away Derek's leverage." Nathan was quiet. "Then, you spent 5 years invisible to protect me." "Yes. That is the most Tory thing you have ever done." Nathan laughed through what sounded like tears. "Brilliant and stupid and self-sacrificing. Will you come home, please?" There was a pause. Then, "I will book a flight tonight. But Tori, you owe me 5 years of explanations, 5 years of birthdays and holidays and life updates." "I know, and I will give them to you, all of them." "Good." Nathan's voice softened. "I missed you so much." "I missed you too, every single day." They talked for a few more minutes about logistics and timing. Nathan said he would fly to New York, that he needed to see her face to really believe she was alive. Victoria promised to meet him at the airport, to introduce him to Marcus properly, to explain everything. When they hung up, Victoria felt something release in her chest. The last piece of the 5-year puzzle, clicking into place. Her brother was safe. Derek was in custody. The world was no longer in danger. And she, Victoria Hayes, was no longer invisible. Victoria walked out of the facility into afternoon sunlight. A helicopter was landing in the parking lot. Marcus climbed out before the blades stopped spinning. He ran to her, pulled her into his arms, held her like he would never let go. "You did it," he said into her hair. "You stopped him. You saved everyone." "We are not done yet." Victoria pulled back to look at him. "We still have work to do, patents to correct, stories to tell, a company to rebuild." "I know," Marcus smiled through tears. "But we will do it together, really together this time." Victoria looked at this man, this flawed, brilliant, finally learning man, and she thought about her mother's words, about trust, about change, about knowing when someone had earned a second chance. "Ask me," she said. "What?" "You said when this was over you would ask me something, so ask." Marcus took a shaky breath. Then he got down on one knee, right there in the parking lot of a Cold War facility surrounded by FBI agents and mountains and the afternoon sun that made everything look clean and new. "Victoria Hayes, will you marry me?" He paused, and she saw him struggling to find words that would carry the weight of what he meant. "Not because I own you or because I built you or because your work needs my name on it, but because you are the most extraordinary person I have ever known. Because you challenge me. Because you make me want to be better than I am. Because when you vanished, I realized that all the success in the world means nothing if you are alone." His voice cracked. "Because I love you. Not for what you can do for me or for the company, but for who you are. For the woman who spent 5 years invisible and came back stronger. For the person who just talked a terrorist down from destroying the world with nothing but empathy and truth." Victoria looked down at him, this man on his knees, this man who had finally learned to bow. She thought about her mother's words, about trust, about change, about knowing when someone had earned a second chance. She thought about Catherine Sterling's story, about how it took Marcus's father 3 years to prove he could change, 3 years of consistent action before forgiveness was possible. And she thought about Grace Ashford, calling to warn her about Derek, still loving a man who had erased her, still hoping he could be saved. Love, Victoria realized, was complicated. It was not the grand gestures or the expensive rings or the public declarations. It was the quiet, consistent choice to see someone, to make space for them, to value their voice as much as your own. Marcus had not learned that yet, not fully. He was trying, but trying was not the same as doing. Ask me again in 6 months, she said. After you have proven you can work beside me instead of above me. After you have corrected every patent and every interview and every lie of omission. After you have shown me that this is not just guilt talking or fear of losing me again. She reached down and took his hands, helping him stand. Ask me when you love me for who I am, not for who you need me to be. When you can celebrate my success without feeling diminished. When you can introduce me as your equal and mean it. Marcus searched her face. And if I do all that? If I prove I have changed? Victoria smiled. The first genuine, unguarded smile she had given him since she came back. Then I am going to say yes. But Marcus, you have to earn it first. Not with money or grand gestures, with time, with actions, with becoming the man I can trust. I will, he promised. Whatever it takes. However long it takes. I know you will. Victoria squeezed his hands. Because you are better than you were. And you will be better still. They stood there for a moment, hands clasped, the wreckage of Derek's facility behind them and an uncertain future ahead. It was not a perfect ending. It was not even a complete one. But it was real. And for Victoria Hayes, who had spent 5 years living in shadows and lies, real was exactly what she needed. How long do we have to wait? Marcus asked quietly. 6 months? Maybe a year. However long it takes for me to trust that you have truly changed. Victoria looked into his eyes. I need to see you fail and try again. I need to see you get frustrated when I am right and you are wrong. I need to see how you handle it when I get more recognition than you. You want to test me. I want to know that when things get hard, when your ego gets bruised, when the world tries to make you the hero and me the helper, you will fight for our partnership. Not just say pretty words about it, actually fight. Marcus nodded slowly. Fair enough. And Victoria? While I am proving myself, while I am earning your trust, can we at least work together? Can we rebuild Sterling Innovations the right way? We can. Victoria let go of his hands, but not as CEO and assistant, as co-founders, equal partners in everything. My name on every patent, my voice in every decision, my vision shaping the company as much as yours. Done. Marcus said it without hesitation. Sterling Hayes Innovations, or Hayes Sterling, whichever order you prefer. Neither. Victoria smiled. Let us build something entirely new. Something that does not belong to either of our egos. Something that belongs to everyone who helped create it. She looked back at the facility, where FBI agents were loading servers into trucks, where the Pandora codes were being secured and Derek Ashford was being processed, and the machinery of justice was grinding forward. We almost lost everything today. Not because of flawed code or inadequate security, but because brilliant people were hurt and no one acknowledged their pain until it was almost too late. So we built a company that sees people, that values collaboration over individual glory, that makes sure no one ever feels erased. Victoria turned back to Marcus. That is the legacy I want to leave. Then that is what we will build. Marcus held out his hand. Partners? Victoria shook it. Partners, for now. And if you prove yourself, maybe something more. They walked hand in hand to the helicopter. Behind them, the Catskill Mountains rose against a blue sky. Ahead of them, Manhattan waited with all its challenges and opportunities and second chances. The world was safe, Derek Ashford was in custody, the Pandora codes were secure. But the real work was just beginning. The work of rebuilding trust, the work of creating something better, the work of making sure that the brilliant minds of tomorrow would never have to choose between being seen and being safe. Victoria Hayes climbed into the helicopter and looked down at the facility growing smaller below. She thought about all the women who had been made invisible. Grace, Catherine, Elena, Isabella, Detective Harding. All of them fighting to be seen in a world that wanted them silent. And she made herself a promise. She would build a company where women did not have to fight to be seen, where brilliance was celebrated regardless of who possessed it, where partnerships meant true equality, where no one ever had to disappear to survive. The helicopter lifted off, and Victoria watched the mountains fall away. Beside her, Marcus sat in silence, giving her space to think, learning, finally, that love was not about filling every silence with words. It was about making room for someone else to breathe. They flew toward the city as the sun began to set, painting the sky in colors that looked like hope. And Victoria Hayes, who had been invisible for 5 years, felt more visible than she ever had. Not because someone else was finally seeing her, but because she had learned to see herself. 6 months is not a long time in the grand scheme of things. It is barely long enough for seasons to change, for habits to form, for trust to grow. But 6 months can also be an eternity, when you are trying to prove that you have become a different person. Marcus Sterling learned this the hard way. The first board meeting after Derek's arrest should have been simple. Victoria presented the restructuring plan for what they were now calling Hayes Sterling Innovations, with her name deliberately placed first. She outlined new ethics protocols, transparent patent systems, and collaborative leadership structures. Marcus sat beside her, not at the head of the table. When Victoria finished, Senator Patricia Aldrich, the board chair who had tried to fire Marcus after the Pandora crisis, raised her hand. "This is all very progressive, Miss Hayes. But who exactly is in charge? Who makes the final decisions?" Before Marcus could speak, before he could slip into old patterns of asserting authority, he stopped himself. He counted to 3. Then he looked at Victoria. "She is," he said. "Victoria is CEO. I am co-founder and chairman of innovation. She has final say on all strategic decisions." The room went silent. This was not the Marcus Sterling they knew. This was not the man who had built an empire by never ceding control. Victoria met his eyes, saw the effort it cost him to say those words, saw him choosing partnership over ego. It was the first test. He passed. The second test came 3 weeks later. Forbes wanted to do a cover story on the rebirth of Sterling Innovations. The journalist, a woman named Rebecca Chen, who had covered the tech industry for 20 years, sat across from Marcus and Victoria in the new conference room. New furniture, new layout, 2 chairs at the head of the table instead of 1. Rebecca had interviewed Marcus before, back when he was the sole face of the company. She remembered a man who spoke in the singular, who talked about his vision, his code, his empire. She was curious to see what had changed. "So," Rebecca said, flipping open her notebook, "Marcus Sterling, the man who built a billion-dollar empire. Tell me about the Prometheus algorithm." Marcus opened his mouth to answer. The old patterns were still there, muscle memory built over years of taking credit. He could feel the words forming. "I designed it. I built it. I created a system that changed everything." But he stopped, counted to 3, looked at Victoria sitting beside him. "I think Victoria should answer that. It is her algorithm after all." Rebecca's eyebrow rose. She had not expected that. "But you are listed as the primary inventor on the original patents. That was a mistake." Marcus's voice was steady, but Victoria could see the effort it cost him. A deliberate choice made in the face of old conditioning. Victoria Hayes designed and built Prometheus. Every line of code, every algorithm, every innovation that made it revolutionary. He pulled out a folder. Inside were new patent filings. Every single one had been amended to list Victoria Hayes as primary inventor, with Marcus Sterling listed as contributing business strategist. "We have spent the last 3 months correcting the record," Marcus said. "Every patent, every paper, every interview where I took credit that was not mine. We are making it right." Rebecca made a note. "That is unusual. Most tech founders would rather die than admit they were not the sole genius behind their success." "Most tech founders are wrong." Marcus met her eyes. "The myth of the solitary genius is just that, a myth. Everything good I have ever done was built on someone else's work. Victoria's work, the team's work. My job was to create the conditions for brilliance, not to claim I was the source of it." Rebecca turned to Victoria. "How does that feel, having your work finally acknowledged?" Victoria thought about how to answer, about 5 years of invisibility, about being erased, about coming back and demanding to be seen. "Like breathing after being underwater for 6 years, she said finally. "Like finally being able to use my own name." "Can you elaborate?" "For 6 years, I was told my work was not mine, that Marcus's name on the patents was necessary for business reasons, for investor confidence, for market perception. I was told that my role was to be brilliant in private and invisible in public." Victoria leaned forward, and I believed it, because I loved the work and I loved Marcus and I thought love meant making myself small so he could be big. "What changed?" "I realized that love does not require erasure. Real partnership, real love, means making space for both people to be seen. And I was not being seen." Rebecca looked at Marcus. "What do you say to that?" Marcus took a breath. I say she is right. I say I was a coward who was too insecure to share credit. I say I took the most brilliant person I have ever known, and I tried to put her in a box so I could feel like I was the only star in the sky. His voice roughened. And I say I am spending every day for the rest of my life trying to be worthy of the second chance she has given me. Rebecca wrote quickly, "This is not the Marcus Sterling I interviewed 5 years ago." Good. That man was a fool. Marcus smiled, but there was no humor in it. That man lost the best thing that ever happened to him, because his ego mattered more than the truth. The article came out 2 weeks later. The headline read, "The Woman Who Built the Future, Victoria Hayes and the True Story of Prometheus." The piece opened with Victoria's story. Her brilliance, her disappearance, her 5 years in hiding. It detailed the original erasure and the current correction. It included quotes from the team about how Victoria had always been the real genius behind Prometheus. Marcus was mentioned in the article, in the third paragraph, as a supporting figure who had spent years taking credit for work that was not his, but was now working to make amends. The tech world exploded. Twitter lit up with debates about credit and genius and whether Marcus's redemption was genuine or performative. Some called him a hero for admitting his mistakes. Others called him a fraud who should have been honest from the start. Victoria watched him read it on his tablet, watched his jaw clench, watched his hands tighten on the device. She saw the moment the old Marcus wanted to call Rebecca, to demand a correction, to insist that he had contributed more than the article suggested. Then she watched him wrestle that impulse down, watched him take a breath, watched him choose differently. He looked up and smiled. "This is a good article. You deserve this. You deserve every word of this recognition." "It must be hard," Victoria said, "seeing yourself described as supporting instead of essential." "It is excruciating." Marcus set down the tablet. "My entire identity has been built on being the genius, the visionary, the man everyone wants to hear from. And this article essentially says I was the business guy who got in the way of the real brilliance." He paused. "But it is also true. And truth matters more than my ego." Victoria reached across the table and took his hand. "That is growth. That is real change. And I see it." "Is it enough?" "Not yet," she smiled. "But we are getting there." The fourth test was harder. It came at a tech conference in San Francisco where both Marcus and Victoria were invited to speak. The organizers had given Marcus the keynote slot, the prime Saturday morning spot that everyone attended. Marcus looked at the schedule and immediately called the conference director. "Victoria needs the keynote," he said. "She is the actual inventor of Prometheus. I will take the afternoon workshop slot." "Mr. Sterling," the director protested, "our attendees registered specifically to hear from you. You are the name everyone knows." Then it is time they learned a different name. Marcus was firm. "Victoria gets the keynote, or we both pull out." The schedule was changed. Victoria gave the keynote to 3,000 people. She talked about the future of ethical AI, about collaborative innovation, about building systems that valued partnership over individual genius. She brought Marcus on stage at the end, introduced him not as her boss or her benefactor, but as her partner, someone who had made mistakes and was working to be better. The standing ovation lasted 4 minutes. Afterward, in the hotel bar, Marcus nursed a whiskey and tried not to think about what it felt like to be introduced instead of doing the introducing. Victoria sat down beside him. "That was hard for you." "It was." Marcus did not lie. "I spent 20 years being the keynote speaker, being the name everyone wanted to hear. And today I stood on that stage as your supporting act, and my ego screamed the entire time. But you did it anyway." "I did it anyway." Marcus looked at her. "Because you deserve that stage more than I did. And because I am trying to become someone whose ego does not require constant feeding." Victoria took his hand. "I know. And I see the work you are putting in. Is it enough?" "I do not know yet." She was honest. "Ask me in 3 months." The months wore on. Marcus kept proving himself in small ways and large ones. He hired a coach to work on collaborative leadership. He joined a men's group that focused on unlearning toxic patterns. He went to therapy twice a week and actually did the homework his therapist assigned. He created a mentorship program at Hayes Sterling Innovations, specifically for women in tech. He made sure half the board seats were held by women. He instituted transparent salary structures, so everyone knew they were being paid fairly. None of it was performative. None of it was done for recognition. It was simply Marcus Sterling doing the hard work of becoming a better man. Victoria watched, And slowly, carefully, she began to trust. But trust was not the only thing rebuilding during those 6 months. Isabella Whitmore had become a different person too. The woman who had slapped Victoria at La Lumiere barely existed anymore. That Isabella had worn designer gowns and $30 million rings and had measured her worth by her last name and her father's bank account. This Isabella wore jeans and sensible shoes. She lived in a small apartment in Brooklyn that she paid for with her own salary. She took the subway to work every morning and brought lunch in a brown paper bag. She was the head of ethics and compliance at Hayes Sterling Innovations, a position Victoria had insisted on creating for her. At first, the staff did not trust her. They remembered the scandal, the slap, the conspiracy with Derek Ashford. They whispered in break rooms and avoided eye contact in elevators. Isabella absorbed their distrust like penance. She worked harder than anyone. She came early and stayed late. She implemented ethics training programs and anonymous reporting systems. She interviewed every employee personally, asking what they needed to feel safe and valued. Slowly, people began to see her not as the villain from the news, but as someone genuinely trying to make amends. 4 months into her tenure, a junior programmer named Sarah Chen came to Isabella's office in tears. "I do not know who else to talk to," Sarah said. "My supervisor keeps taking credit for my code. He presents my work in meetings like it is his. And when I tried to say something, he told me I was being oversensitive." Isabella felt something twist in her chest. She knew this story. She had enabled this story when she helped Derek. "What is your supervisor's name?" "Robert Harrison. He has been here for 8 years. He is friends with all the senior leadership. No one is going to believe me over him." "I believe you." Isabella stood. "And we are going to fix this." It took 2 weeks of investigation. Isabella pulled code repositories, meeting recordings, email chains. She built an airtight case showing that Robert Harrison had been taking credit for Sarah Chen's work for 6 months. She presented it to Victoria and Marcus in a closed-door meeting. Victoria's face went cold with fury. "Fire him, today!" "Wait!" Isabella held up a hand. "I have a better idea." She called an all-hands meeting. Every employee in the company, from the janitorial staff to the executive team, 800 people crammed into the main auditorium. Isabella stood at the podium with Sarah Chen beside her. "6 months ago, I was complicit in a conspiracy that tried to destroy this company. I helped a man who wanted to weaponize our work. I betrayed the trust of people who had done nothing wrong." Isabella's voice was steady. "I did this because I was desperate and scared, and I let that fear justify terrible choices." She paused. "I am telling you this because I do not want to hide from my past. I want you to know who I was so you can see who I am trying to become." Then she turned to Sarah. "This woman came to me because her supervisor was stealing her work. And when I investigated, I found a pattern. Not just with Sarah, but with 3 other junior developers, all women, all having their contributions erased by the same man." A murmur went through the crowd. "Robert Harrison has been terminated. His severance has been revoked. And every piece of code he claimed credit for has been reattributed to its actual creators." Isabella looked out at the assembled company. "This is what ethics and compliance means. It means believing people when they say they are being hurt. It means investigating even when it is uncomfortable. It means correcting injustice even when the perpetrator is powerful." She stepped back from the podium. Sarah Chen stepped forward. "My name is Sarah Chen. I am 24 years old. I have been coding since I was 12. And for the last 6 months, a man with more seniority and more connections has been taking my work and calling it his own." Sarah's voice shook but did not break. "I almost quit. I almost gave up on this industry entirely. But then Isabella Whitmore listened to me. She believed me. And she fought for me." She looked at Isabella. "Thank you. Thank you for seeing me." The applause started small. Then it grew. Within seconds, 800 people were on their feet, clapping for the junior programmer who had found her voice, and the former socialite who had helped amplify it. Victoria watched from the back of the auditorium. She felt tears on her face and did not bother to wipe them away. Marcus stood beside her. "That was extraordinary. That was redemption." Victoria's voice was thick. Real redemption. Not words. Action. That night, Victoria invited Isabella to dinner. A small Vietnamese restaurant in Chinatown. Nothing fancy. Just good food and quiet conversation. "You did a good thing today," Victoria said. "I did the bare minimum." Isabella picked at her foe. "I listened to someone who was hurting and I helped them. That should not be extraordinary." But it is, because most people do not do even that much. Victoria leaned forward. Isabella, 6 months ago you hit me. You humiliated me. You were part of a conspiracy that almost destroyed everything I built. I know. Isabella could not meet her eyes. And today you stood in front of 800 people and you used your power to protect someone vulnerable. You took everything you learned from being hurt, and you made sure someone else did not have to hurt the same way. Victoria reached across the table and took Isabella's hand. That is growth. That is change. That is becoming someone new. Isabella finally looked up, tears streaming down her face. Do you forgive me? Victoria was quiet for a long moment. Then, I am getting there. I am not all the way there yet. But I am closer than I was. That is enough. Isabella squeezed her hand. That is more than I deserve. You deserve a chance to be better. We all do. They finished their meal in comfortable silence. Two women who had been on opposite sides of a war, learning to be on the same side of peace. But the most surprising transformation was not Marcus or Isabella. It was Grace Ashford. Grace arrived in New York on a cold Tuesday in November, 5 months after Derek's arrest. She had flown in from London, where she had been living with her daughter and her parents for 3 years. Victoria met her at a coffee shop in the West Village. They had spoken on the phone several times since the confrontation at the facility, but this was their first face-to-face meeting. Grace was 50 years old, with silver hair she wore in a short practical cut and eyes that had seen too much. She looked like what she was, a brilliant woman who had survived being erased and had come out stronger. Thank you for meeting me, Grace said as they sat down with their coffees. Of course, Victoria studied her. You said it was important. It is. Grace took a breath. I went to see Derek. Victoria set down her cup. How is he? Better. Worse. Both. Grace's smile was sad. He is in a minimum security facility in Pennsylvania. He has been attending therapy, participating in rehabilitation programs. He is trying. Does he understand what he did? I think so. Grace looked out the window at the gray November day. He cried when he saw me. Really cried. He said he was sorry for threatening Emma, for threatening your brother, for everything. Do you believe him? I want to. Grace's voice cracked. God help me, Victoria. I want to believe my ex-husband is not a monster, that the man I loved is still in there somewhere. He is? Victoria said it with certainty. I saw him, at the facility before he surrendered. I saw the man you married. He is buried under a lot of pain and anger. But he is there. Grace looked at her with something like wonder. You could have let him destroy himself. You could have let the FBI raid the facility, let him die in the explosion he rigged. Why did you save him? Because I know what it feels like to be in so much pain that you cannot see a way out. Victoria's voice was soft, and because I believe people can change if someone gives them a chance. Even people who threaten children? Especially people who threaten children. Because that is when you know they are desperate. When someone is willing to hurt the most vulnerable, it means they have lost all hope. And hopeless people need someone to see their humanity. Grace was crying now, silent tears that tracked down her weathered face. I do not know if I can forgive him. You do not have to. Forgiveness is not required. Victoria leaned forward. But if you want to give him a chance to earn it, that is your choice, no one else's. Emma does not want me to see him. She is 17 now. She remembers the threats. She remembers being afraid. Then you have a choice to make. Your daughter or your ex-husband. And Grace, there is only one right answer to that question. I know. Grace wiped her eyes. I told Derek I would visit once a month. I would support his rehabilitation. But I could not have a relationship with him while Emma was still a minor. He has to earn his way back into our lives. If he ever can. That is fair. He asked about you. Grace managed a small smile. He wanted to know if you were okay, if Marcus was treating you well, if you had forgiven him. What did you tell him? That you were stronger than any of us. And that Marcus Sterling was the luckiest man alive if you decided to give him a second chance. Victoria laughed. I have not decided yet. Yes, you have. Grace's smile widened. You have been deciding for 6 months. You just want to make sure it is real before you admit it. She was not wrong. As autumn turned to winter, Victoria watched Marcus with the careful attention of someone deciding the rest of her life. She watched him in meetings, making sure to ask the quietest voices for their input. She watched him in interviews, crediting his team by name instead of taking singular credit. She watched him hire a female CFO who was more qualified than him and celebrate her expertise instead of feeling threatened. She watched him fail too. watched him slip into old patterns of dominance, watched him catch himself, apologize, and try again. The work was not perfect, but it was real. 6 months to the day after Derek's arrest, Marcus asked Victoria to dinner. Not a work dinner, not a strategy session, a date. They went to a small Italian restaurant in the West Village, the kind of place with checkered tablecloths and candles and wine bottles. Nothing fancy, nothing designed to impress. Just two people sharing a meal. They talked about the company, about the new projects in development, about the mentorship program that was already changing lives. They talked about everything except the question that hung between them like humidity before a storm. After dessert, after the check was paid, Marcus reached across the table and took Victoria's hand. "It has been 6 months." "It has." Victoria did not pull away. "I have done everything you asked. I corrected the patents, I changed my behavior in meetings. I went to therapy and joined a men's group and hired a coach. I have tried to become someone worthy of your trust." "You have. And I have failed. A lot. I have caught myself being dismissive. I have had to apologize to employees for talking over them. I have had moments where my ego roared and I had to wrestle it back down." "I know, I saw." Marcus looked at their joined hands. "I am not perfect, Victoria. I am going to keep failing. I am going to keep having to work on this. But I promise you I will never stop trying. I will never go back to being the man who erased you." Victoria felt her throat tighten. "I know. So I am asking you, not as a grand gesture, not in front of cameras or crowds, just here, in this restaurant with bad wine and okay pasta." He squeezed her hand. "Victoria Hayes, will you marry me?" She had known this moment was coming. She had been preparing for it for 6 months. But now that it was here, now that the question hung in the air between them, she found herself unable to speak. Because saying yes meant trusting him completely. It meant believing that the change was real. It meant risking her heart again after it had been broken so thoroughly. It meant choosing hope over fear. Victoria looked at Marcus, really looked at him, not the billionaire CEO, not the man who had erased her, but the person he was becoming, the man who had spent 6 months doing the unglamorous work of being better. She thought about her mother's words, about trusting herself to know when someone had earned a second chance. She thought about Grace visiting Derek in prison, about Isabella protecting Sarah Chen, about all the women who had been erased and had chosen to believe in redemption anyway. And she thought about herself, about 5 years of invisibility, about coming back, about refusing to stay down. "Ask me if I trust you," she said. "What?" "Ask me if I trust you, Marcus." He swallowed hard. "Do you trust me?" "I trust that you are trying. I trust that you see your mistakes. I trust that you will keep working to be better." Victoria paused. "And that is enough." "Enough for what?" "Enough for yes." The word hung in the air like a bell ringing. Marcus stared at her, not quite believing. "Yes?" "Yes." Victoria smiled. "I will marry you, not because I think you are perfect, but because I have seen you fail and try again, because I have watched you choose growth over comfort, because you have earned this." Marcus stood so abruptly, his chair scraped the floor. He pulled Victoria up and into his arms and held her like she was the only thing keeping him anchored to the earth. People in the restaurant were staring. Someone started clapping. Soon the whole room was applauding. But Marcus and Victoria barely noticed. They stood together, two people who had been broken and were learning to be whole. When they finally pulled apart, Marcus was crying. Happy tears, the kind that only come when you have been given something you thought you had lost forever. "I love you," he said. "I have loved you since that night in the lab when we got Prometheus working. I have loved you through 5 years of absence, and I will love you for the rest of our lives." "I love you too." Victoria wiped his tears with her thumb. "But Marcus, this is not a fairy tale ending. This is a beginning. We still have work to do. On ourselves, on our relationship, on building something that lasts." "I know, and I'm ready." They left the restaurant hand in hand. Outside, snow was beginning to fall, the first snow of winter, covering the city in quiet white. "We should call people," Marcus said. "Your mother, my mother, the team. Tomorrow. Tonight, I just want this to be ours." They walked through the snowy streets of Manhattan, two people who had found their way back to each other through pain and patience and the hard work of change. Above them, in her apartment in Connecticut, Elena Hayes was making tea when her phone rang. She did not answer it. She knew what the call would say. A mother always knows. In London, Grace Ashford was reading her daughter a bedtime story when she felt a sudden warmth in her chest, a sense that somewhere, something good was happening, that redemption was possible. In Brooklyn, Isabella Whitmore was reviewing ethics complaints when she smiled for no reason she could name. Just a feeling, just hope. And in Pennsylvania, in a minimum security facility, Derek Ashford sat in his cell and wrote a letter to his daughter. His hands shook as he wrote. The words came slowly, but they came. "Dear Emma," it began, "I know I do not deserve your forgiveness, but I want you to know that I am trying to become someone you could be proud of again." He did not know if she would read it, but he wrote it anyway. Because change required hope, and hope required trying. Victoria and Marcus returned to Hayes Sterling Innovations the next morning with matching smiles and the quiet glow of people who had made a choice and meant it. The announcement went out at noon, simple and direct. Victoria Hayes and Marcus Sterling were engaged to be married. The response was immediate and overwhelming. The board sent champagne, the staff sent flowers. The tech press wrote articles analyzing what this meant for the company, for the industry, for the future of collaborative leadership. But the response that mattered most came from an unexpected source. A handwritten letter arrived at Victoria's office 3 days after the engagement announcement. The return address was a prison in Pennsylvania. "Dear Victoria, Grace told me you said yes to Marcus. I wanted to write and tell you that I am happy for you. I know that is strange coming from me. I know I tried to destroy everything you built, but I am genuinely happy that you found your way back to each other. I have been thinking a lot about what you said at the facility, about how the hardest thing is recognizing that your enemies are human too. I did not understand it then. I thought you were just being naive. But I understand it now. I am human, flawed and broken and drowning in regret, but still human, still capable of change if someone believes it is possible. You believed it was possible. You saw me when I could not see myself. Thank you for that. I am working with a therapist here, trying to understand why I let pain turn me into someone I do not recognize, trying to figure out how to be a man my daughter could trust again. It is hard work, harder than building algorithms or running companies, but it is the most important work I have ever done. Tell Marcus I am sorry, really sorry, not for getting caught, but for the pain I caused, for the fear I created, for being so consumed by my own hurt that I became something monstrous. And tell him something else. Tell him he is lucky beyond measure to have you. Tell him not to waste a single day of the life you are building together. Tell him that some of us do not get second chances. Wishing you all the happiness you deserve, Derek Ashford. Victoria read the letter twice. Then she folded it carefully and put it in her desk drawer. She thought about calling Derek, about visiting him, about continuing the work of redemption that had started in that facility 6 months ago. But not yet. Some things needed time. Instead, she called Grace. "I got a letter from Derek." "I know, he told me he was going to write." Grace paused. "What did you think?" "I think he is trying. I think the work is real." Victoria looked out her window at the Manhattan skyline. "I think people can change if they are willing to do the work. Do you think I should let Emma see him?" "That is not my choice to make. But Grace, if you do, make sure she is ready. Make sure she wants it. Do not do it because you think you should. Do it because it is right for her. She is my daughter. Protecting her is the only thing that matters." Then you already know the answer. They talked for a while longer about small things and large things and the space between. Two women who had been erased by the same patterns, learning to trust again. When Victoria hung up, she sat in the quiet of her office and thought about the last 6 months. About Marcus proving himself, about Isabella finding redemption, about Derek beginning the long road back to humanity, about herself, learning that being visible was not the same as being vindicated, that true power came not from revenge, but from building something better. She thought about the wedding that was being planned. Small and intimate, her mother had suggested. Just family and close friends, nothing ostentatious. But there was one person Victoria wanted there, who was not family or friend, someone who deserved to see that redemption was possible. She picked up her phone and called Isabella. "I have a favor to ask. Anything." Isabella's voice was immediate. "Will you be one of my bridesmaids?" The silence on the other end was absolute. Then quietly, "Why would you want that?" "Because 6 months ago, you hit me and tried to destroy my life. And today, you are one of the people I trust most to build something better. That is a story worth celebrating." Isabella was crying. Victoria could hear it in her breathing. Yes, I would be honored. I would be so honored. Good. Bring a dress. Something you like. Nothing expensive. Just you. They talked about details and dates and all the mundane things that went into planning a wedding. But underneath it all was something deeper. Two women who had been on opposite sides learning to stand together. The winter passed into spring. The wedding was set for May, in a garden in Connecticut, at Elena Hayes's house where Victoria had grown up. The guest list was small, 50 people. Family, close friends, the core team from Hayes Sterling Innovations. Grace Ashford flew in from London with her daughter. Emma was 17 now, tall and serious, and so much like her mother it was startling. She shook Victoria's hand with perfect politeness and did not mention her father. But Grace did, quietly, after the rehearsal dinner. Derek asked if I would call him on the day of the wedding, just to tell him how it went. He said he wanted to know that good things still happened in the world. Will you? I do not know. Grace looked tired. Emma does not want me to have contact with him. She says every time I talk to him I get sad for days, and she is not wrong. Then listen to your daughter. Victoria's voice was firm. Derek's rehabilitation is important, but your relationship with Emma is more important. Do not sacrifice your daughter for your ex-husband. When did you become so wise? Victoria smiled. I spent 5 years thinking about what matters. Turns out, the people you love matter more than the people who hurt you. The wedding day dawned clear and bright, the kind of perfect May morning that felt like a gift. Victoria stood in her childhood bedroom, looking at herself in the mirror. The dress was simple, elegant, cream-colored silk that moved like water. Her mother stood behind her, fastening the tiny buttons. "You look beautiful," Elena said, her voice thick with tears. "Your father would have been so proud." I wish he was here. He is. Elena kissed her daughter's temple. He is in every good choice you have made, every time you chose yourself over someone else's expectations. He would have loved Marcus, and he would have loved watching you make him earn you. Victoria laughed. You sound like you approve. I do. Elena met her daughter's eyes in the mirror. 6 months ago, I was not sure. I thought maybe you were settling, but watching the two of you together, watching him work to be better, watching you hold your boundaries, that is a partnership worth building a life on. There was a knock on the door. Isabella poked her head in, wearing a simple blue dress and a nervous smile. It is time. The wedding was everything it needed to be and nothing it did not need to be. 50 people on folding chairs in a garden, a string quartet playing Vivaldi, flowers from Elena's garden, simple and perfect. Marcus stood at the altar with Dr. Chen as his best man, and Nathan Hayes beside him as a groomsman. Marcus wore a simple suit and an expression of wonder, like he could not quite believe this was real. Nathan looked different than he had 5 years ago. At 23 now, he had grown from a boy into a man during his time in New Zealand. But his eyes were the same, kind, protective, the eyes of a little brother who had forgiven his sister for disappearing because he understood she had done it to save him. When Marcus had called Nathan to ask him to stand at the wedding, Nathan had said yes immediately. Then he had added quietly, "Take care of her. She saved my life. Make sure she knows her life is worth living too." Victoria walked down the aisle on her mother's arm, not being given away, being supported, being celebrated. When she reached Marcus, Elena kissed her daughter and then, surprisingly, turned to Marcus. "You take care of my girl. She is the best thing you will ever have." I know, Marcus's voice broke. "I will spend every day proving I deserve her." Elena nodded, then stepped back. The ceremony was short. No long speeches about love conquering all or souls finding each other. Just simple vows, honest and real. The officiant, a woman who had known Elena for 30 years, spoke about partnership and choice and the daily work of building a life together. Then she nodded to Marcus. He took Victoria's hands. His were shaking. "Victoria Hayes, 6 years ago I asked you to build something with me. And you did. You built something revolutionary. Something that changed the world. But I took credit for your work. I erased your name. I made you invisible because I was too insecure to share the spotlight." His voice cracked. "I lost you because of that. I lost 5 years that we could have spent together. I lost the chance to watch you shine. I lost everything that mattered because I chose ego over truth." He took a shaky breath. "So today, I make you these promises. I promise to see you every single day, not just when it is easy or convenient, but especially when it is hard. When my ego wants to claim credit. When I want to make decisions without consulting you. When old patterns try to reassert themselves. I promise to make space for your voice. In meetings, in interviews, in every decision we make together. I promise that when people ask about our work, I will say we, not I. We. I promise to celebrate your success. Even when, especially when you succeed more than I do, when you get the keynote and I get the workshop slot. When your name is in the headline and mine is in the third paragraph. I promise to be genuinely happy for you. Marcus's tears were falling freely now. I promise to fail, because I am human and old patterns die hard. But I also promise to keep trying, to apologize when I mess up, to do better the next day, to never stop working to be worthy of you. And I promise to love you. Not for what you can do for me, not for the brilliance you bring to my life, but for who you are. The woman who spent 5 years invisible and came back stronger. The woman who saved a man who tried to destroy her. The woman who believes in second chances, even when they are hard. He squeezed her hands. You are the most extraordinary person I have ever known, and I will spend the rest of my life making sure the world knows it. Victoria took a moment to steady herself. When she spoke, her voice was clear. Marcus Sterling, 6 years ago, you erased me. You took my work and called it yours. You made me feel like my only value was in being invisible. She paused. But you also did something else. You saw my potential when I was just a graduate student with wild ideas. You gave me resources to build something impossible. You created space for brilliance, even if you could not share credit for it. And when I came back, when I demanded to be seen, you did not fight me. You listened. You changed. You did the hard work of becoming someone different. So today, I make you these promises. I promise to trust you. Not blindly, not without earning it, but genuinely. I promise to believe that your change is real, that your growth is ongoing, that you will keep doing the work even when it is hard. I promise to give you room to fail. Because change is not linear, you will slip into old patterns. You will have to catch yourself and apologize and try again. And I promise to hold space for that process, without punishing you for being human. Victoria felt tears on her own face. I promise to build something together that is bigger than either of us alone. Not your company or my company. Our company. Our vision. Our shared legacy. I promise to call you out when you slip, to remind you when you take up too much space, to make sure that our partnership stays equal, even when the world tries to make it hierarchical. And I promise to love you for who you are becoming, for the man who got on his knees in a parking lot and asked for a chance to prove himself, for the person who chose growth over comfort. She squeezed his hands back. You are not perfect, Marcus Sterling. You never will be. But you are trying, and that is enough. That is everything. The officiant smiled through her own tears. By the power vested in me by the state of New York, I now pronounce you partners in life and in work. You may kiss. Marcus cupped Victoria's face gently, reverently, like she was something precious that might break. And he kissed her like she was the answer to a question he had been asking his whole life. The garden erupted in applause and cheers, 50 people celebrating 2 people who had been broken and had chosen to heal together. The reception was held under a tent in the garden. There was dancing and champagne and laughter. Dr. Chen gave a toast about brilliant minds and second chances. Isabella gave a toast about redemption being possible for anyone brave enough to try. Nathan Hayes stood next, his hand shaking slightly as he raised his glass. He had not prepared remarks. He had thought he would just smile and nod and let others speak. But looking at his sister, radiant in her wedding dress, he found words coming anyway. 5 years ago, my sister disappeared. She told me she had to go away for work. Something classified, something important. And I believed her because I always believed her. His voice caught. What I did not know was that she disappeared to protect me. That she made herself invisible so I could stay safe. That she gave up everything, her career, her love, her life, because someone threatened to hurt me if she did not. Victoria's eyes filled with tears. Today, I want to say thank you. Thank you for coming back. Thank you for being the bravest person I know. And thank you for teaching me that love sometimes means sacrifice, but it should never mean erasure. He turned to Marcus. And you better spend every day of the rest of your life making sure my sister never has to disappear again. Make sure she is always seen, always heard, always valued. Because if you do not, you will answer to me. Marcus smiled through tears. I will, I promise. Nathan raised his glass higher. To Victoria, the woman who saved me, the woman who came back, the woman who refused to stay invisible. Everyone drank. The cheers were thunderous. And Elena Hayes, widow and mother, and the woman who had worked 3 jobs to give her children a future, stood and raised her glass. To my daughter who taught me that being invisible is sometimes the bravest thing you can do, and that coming back is the hardest. To Marcus, who learned that being strong means admitting you were wrong. And to all of us who have been erased and have chosen to come back anyway, we see you, we celebrate you, we love you. Everyone drank, everyone cheered. And in that moment, in that garden, surrounded by people who had been hurt and had chosen to heal, Victoria Hayes Sterling felt something she had not felt in 6 years. She felt whole, not because a man had married her, not because her name was finally on the patents where it belonged, not because she had defeated her enemies or reclaimed her legacy, but because she had learned to see herself. And that, in the end, was the only visibility that truly mattered. The party went late into the night. When it was finally over, when the guests had gone and the tent was being taken down, Marcus and Victoria stood in the garden under a sky full of stars. Thank you, Marcus said, for giving me a chance to be better. Thank you for doing the work to earn it. They stood together in comfortable silence. 2 people who had been broken and had chosen to heal together. Tomorrow they would leave for a honeymoon in Greece. Then they would come back and continue building Hayes Sterling Innovations into something revolutionary. But tonight, they just stood in the garden and breathed. And somewhere in Pennsylvania, Derek Ashford received a phone call from his ex-wife. It was beautiful, Grace said. Victoria looked radiant, Marcus looked grateful, and everyone there believed in second chances. Derek listened and cried, and felt the first genuine hope he had felt in 7 years. Change was possible, redemption was real. All you had to do was be brave enough to try. 5 years is long enough for almost anything. Long enough for a marriage to settle into comfortable patterns or shatter under pressure. Long enough for a company to thrive or collapse. Long enough for people to prove that change is real, or reveal that it was always just performance. 5 years is also long enough to build a legacy. Hayes Sterling Innovations occupied 3 floors of a new building in Lower Manhattan. One designed with floor-to-ceiling windows that let in so much light, it felt like working inside the sky itself. The architecture was deliberate, no dark corners, no hidden spaces. Everything visible, everything transparent. Victoria Hayes. Sterling stood in her office on the top floor and looked out at the city that had once made her invisible. She was 33 now, with silver beginning to thread through her dark hair. Some people dyed it. She wore it like a badge. Her office was not the largest in the building. That distinction belonged to the collaborative workspace on the 2nd floor where teams gathered around tables made from reclaimed wood and whiteboards that covered entire walls. Her office was simply hers, a place to think, a place to create, a place to breathe. On her desk sat 3 photographs. The first showed her and Marcus on their wedding day, dancing in Elena's garden under string lights. The second showed the entire Hayes Sterling team at the ribbon cutting for their new building. The third was new, taken just 6 months ago. It showed a little girl with dark curls and gray eyes, her face serious as she concentrated on building something with blocks. 3 years old, fierce and brilliant and utterly herself. Elena Catherine Sterling, named for both grandmothers, called Ellie by everyone who loved her. Victoria touched the photo gently. Being a mother was harder than building algorithms, harder than running a company, harder than anything she had ever done. But it was also the most important. There was a knock on her door. Marcus poked his head in, smiling in that way that still made her heart skip even after 5 years of marriage. She's asking for you. Something about her tower not being tall enough. Victoria laughed. Tell her I will be right there. Marcus came fully into the office. He was 40 now, with more gray in his hair than brown, and he wore it well. The years had softened him in good ways, made him quicker to listen, slower to assume, more comfortable with not being the center of attention. How was the call with Forbes? He asked. Good. They want to do a 5-year retrospective on Hayes Sterling. The journalist asked if you wanted to be interviewed. And you said? I said they should talk to the team. To Dr. Chen about the innovations pipeline, to Priya about our security protocols, to Isabella about our ethics framework. Victoria smiled. I said you would be happy to provide context as needed, but the real story is not about us. It is about what we built together. Marcus crossed the room and kissed her forehead. 5 years ago, I would have demanded the cover story. I know, that is why I married you, because you became someone who does not demand anymore. He laughed. I still demand sometimes. Just ask Ellie. She wanted ice cream for breakfast and I said no. She told me I was being unreasonable. She is 3. Everything is unreasonable when you are 3. She is also terrifyingly smart. This morning she asked me why the sky is blue. And when I tried to explain Rayleigh scattering, she said that was boring and made up her own explanation involving magic and dragons. Victoria grinned. She is definitely ours. They stood together in comfortable silence, looking out at the city. 5 years of marriage. 5 years of building something better. 5 years of proving that change was not just possible, but sustainable. It had not been perfect. There had been fights. Moments when Marcus slipped into old patterns and Victoria had to call him out. Moments when Victoria's walls went back up and Marcus had to be patient while she remembered how to trust. But they had worked through it, together. The phone on Victoria's desk rang. She picked it up. Miss Hayes Sterling, the receptionist said. There is someone here to see you. He does not have an appointment, but he said you would want to know he is here. Who is it? Derek Ashford. Victoria felt the air leave her lungs. She looked at Marcus. His expression had gone carefully neutral. Send him up, Victoria said. Conference room B, and please ask Dr. Chen and Isabella to join us. She hung up and turned to Marcus. He is out. I know, his parole hearing was last week. Marcus ran a hand through his hair. I have been tracking it. I just did not think he would come here. Where else would he go? They made their way to the conference room. Dr. Chen arrived first, followed quickly by Isabella. Both of them had been briefed on Derek's parole, but neither had expected to see him. Isabella looked pale. The last time she had been in a room with Derek Ashford, she had been his co-conspirator. Now she was the head of ethics at the company he had tried to destroy. Are you okay? Victoria asked her. Isabella nodded. I can do this. The door opened. Derek Ashford walked in, and for a moment, no one spoke. He looked different. Older, obviously. He was 47 now, and 5 years in prison had aged him beyond his years. His silver hair was now completely white. His expensive suits had been replaced by simple khakis, and a button-down shirt that looked like it came from a discount store. But the biggest difference was in his eyes. The rage that had burned there 5 years ago was gone. In its place was something quieter, something that might have been peace, or might have been resignation. Victoria, he said. His voice was rough, like he was not used to using it. Thank you for seeing me. Why are you here, Derek? Marcus's tone was not hostile, but it was not welcoming either. Derek looked at each of them in turn. Dr. Chen, whom he had never met, Isabella, who had been his pawn, Marcus, whom he had tried to destroy, Victoria, who had saved him from himself. I'm here to apologize. Properly. Not through a lawyer or a letter, face to face. He sat down without being invited. His hands shook slightly as he placed them on the table. 5 years ago, I tried to sell weapons to terrorists because I was angry that Marcus Sterling had taken credit for my work. I threatened Victoria's brother. I manipulated Isabella and her father. I was willing to let millions of people die because my ego had been bruised. His voice cracked. There is no apology big enough for that. No penance sufficient. But I wanted you to know that I understand what I did. I understand the harm I caused. And I am spending the rest of my life trying to be better. Victoria studied him. In prison, Derek had completed every rehabilitation program offered. He had earned 2 degrees. He had become a mentor to younger inmates, teaching them coding and mathematics. He had written to Grace and Emma every week, never expecting responses and rarely receiving them. He had done the work. What do you want from us? Victoria asked. Nothing. Derek met her eyes. I do not want forgiveness. I do not deserve it. I do not want my old life back. I do not deserve that either. I just wanted you to see that the man you saw at the facility, the one who was drowning in pain, he is gone. Or at least he is trying to be gone. What will you do now? Dr. Chen asked. I have a job lined up, teaching mathematics at a community college in Pennsylvania. It does not pay much, but it is honest work. Derek's smile was sad. I will never write code again. That is part of my parole, but I can teach others. And maybe that is enough. Isabella spoke up, her voice shaking slightly. I saw your file, your rehabilitation record. You helped develop a prison education program that has reduced recidivism by 40%. Derek looked at her, really looked at her. I am sorry, Isabella, for using you, for manipulating you, for making you believe you were saving your family when really you were just helping me destroy people. I made my own choices. Isabella's voice was steadier now. You gave me an option and I took it. I own that. But thank you for the apology. There was a long silence. Then Victoria stood, walked around the table, and held out her hand. Derek looked at it like it might be a trap. Then slowly, carefully, he stood and shook it. Good luck, Derek, Victoria said. I mean that. I hope you build a good life. A quiet life. A life that does not hurt people. Thank you. Derek's eyes filled with tears. And Victoria, I am sorry. For everything. For all of it. I am so sorry. I know, and I believe you. Derek left a few minutes later. They watched him go. This man who had once been a monster and was now just a broken human trying to be whole. Do you really forgive him? Marcus asked when they were alone. Victoria thought about it. I do not know if forgive is the right word, but I acknowledge that he changed, that he did the work, that he became someone different, and that is enough. Is it enough for Grace? That is for Grace to decide. 3,000 miles away, in a small flat in London, Grace Ashford was making tea when her phone rang. The number was unfamiliar, but she answered anyway. Mom? It was Emma's voice. But Emma was at university in Edinburgh. She should not be calling in the middle of the day. What is wrong? Nothing is wrong. Emma paused. I got a letter from Dad. Grace set down the kettle. Her hand shook slightly. She had been getting Derek's letters for 5 years. She had read every one. Emma had refused to even open them. And I read it. Emma's voice was small, young, not like the confident 19-year-old she usually was. He told me about his parole, about the teaching job, about how he has been going to therapy and working on himself. What do you think? I do not know what to think. Emma sounded lost. He hurt us, Mom. He threatened me. He made you cry for years. How am I supposed to just forgive that? You are not supposed to do anything. Grace's voice was gentle. Forgiveness is not required, sweetheart. You do not owe him anything. But he is my father. He is. And he made terrible choices. And now he is trying to be better. But Emma, that does not mean you have to let him back into your life. You get to decide what kind of relationship you want with him, if any. Emma was quiet for a long time. Then, do you forgive him? Grace looked out her window at the gray London sky. She thought about 7 years of marriage, about being erased, about threats and fear and divorce, about 5 years of letters and slow, painful growth. I do not forgive him. Not completely, not yet. But I acknowledge that he is trying, and I hope he succeeds in becoming someone better. Do you still love him? The question hung in the air. I love who he was. The man I married, the brilliant scientist who wanted to save the world. Grace's voice caught. I do not love who he became, the man who let pain turn him into someone cruel. But I hope for who he might still be. Does that make sense? Yes. Emma's voice was thick with tears. I think I want to write to him, not to forgive him, just to talk, to see if there's anything left worth saving. Then do that. Grace felt tears on her own face. But Emma, do it for yourself. Not for him, not for me, for you. Okay, Mom, I love you. I love you too, sweetheart. Grace hung up and stood in her quiet flat and cried. For the man she had loved, for the daughter who was braver than she had been, for the possibility that even the most broken things could sometimes be repaired. In New York, Victoria was sitting on the floor of the playroom with Ellie, helping her build a tower of blocks that kept falling down. It is not working, Ellie said, frustrated. It is too tall. Nothing is too tall if you build it right. Victoria helped her daughter adjust the base, making it wider, more stable. See? Now try again. Ellie carefully placed another block, then another. The tower wobbled but held. I did it! Ellie's face lit up with pure joy. Mama, I did it! You did. Victoria pulled her daughter into her lap. You built something that stands. Like you and Daddy? Victoria laughed. Yes, sweetheart. Like me and Daddy. We had to rebuild our foundation to make sure everything on top of it would not fall down. What is a foundation? It is what holds everything else up. The part you build first that makes sure everything after is strong. Ellie thought about this with the seriousness only a 3-year-old could manage. Am I your foundation? Victoria felt her heart squeeze. No, baby. You are what we built on top of the foundation. You are what we are holding up so you can reach as high as you want. I want to reach the sky. Then you will, because your foundation is strong. And we will make sure it stays that way. Marcus appeared in the doorway, smiling at his wife and daughter. Dinner is ready. Also, your mother called. She wants to know if we are coming to Connecticut this weekend. Ellie jumped up. Grandma, Elena, can we go, Mama, please? We can go. Victoria stood, hoisting Ellie onto her hip. But first, you have to eat your vegetables. Vegetables are boring. Vegetables keep you alive so you can do interesting things. Trust me on this one. They went downstairs to the kitchen, the 3 of them, and ate dinner together like thousands of other families. Nothing special, nothing remarkable. Just a woman who had been erased, a man who had learned to see her, and a daughter who would grow up knowing she was visible from the very start. 2 months later, Hayes Sterling Innovations held its annual company meeting. 800 employees gathered in the auditorium to hear about the year's achievements and the coming year's goals. Victoria stood at the podium with Marcus beside her, not behind her, not in front of her, beside. 5 years ago, Victoria began. This company was built on a lie. The lie that one person could be solely responsible for innovation. The lie that genius was individual rather than collective. The lie that some people deserved credit, while others deserved invisibility. She paused, looking out at the assembled faces. We have spent 5 years dismantling that lie, building something better, creating a culture where everyone's contributions are visible, valued, and celebrated. Marcus stepped forward. We have not been perfect. We have made mistakes. We have had to course correct. We have learned that building an ethical company is not a destination, but a daily practice. But we have also succeeded. Victoria's voice rang with pride. Our employee satisfaction scores are the highest in the industry. Our innovation pipeline is the most diverse. Our products are changing lives while protecting privacy and promoting equity. We have proven that you do not have to choose between profit and principle, that doing good and doing well can coexist. That visibility for all is better than glory for one. The presentation continued. Dr. Chen talked about new projects. Priya discussed security innovations. Teams presented their work, standing in the spotlight, their names and faces projected on screens so everyone knew exactly who had created what. At the end, Isabella stood up. As head of ethics and compliance, she had something to announce. This year, we are launching the Visible Voices Initiative, a program designed to identify and elevate work being done by people who have been traditionally overlooked or erased. We will be actively searching for the junior developers whose ideas get claimed by senior staff, the administrative assistants whose organizational genius keeps projects running, the invisible labor that makes everything else possible. She paused. Because I know what it feels like to be complicit in erasure, and I know what it costs. So we are making a commitment as a company to see everyone who works here. Really see them. The applause was thunderous. After the meeting, Victoria found Isabella in the hallway. That was powerful. Isabella smiled. I learned from the best. They stood together. These 2 women who had been enemies and were now allies. The former socialite who had slapped a waitress, and the former waitress who had become a CEO. Have you heard from your father? Victoria asked. Isabella's smile faded. He is in prison. Federal charges for fraud. He will be there for another 8 years at least. Do you visit him? Once a month. Isabella looked tired. He still does not understand what he did wrong. He thinks he was just trying to save the family. But I keep going because he is my father, and because I hope eventually he will understand. That is generous of you. It is exhausting. Isabella laughed without humor. But Grace visits Derek, so I figure if she can do it, I can too. Grace is stronger than most people. So are you. Isabella looked at Victoria. You came back. After 5 years of being invisible, you came back and you demanded to be seen. That is the strongest thing I have ever witnessed. I was terrified the whole time. Courage is not the absence of fear. It is acting despite it. Isabella squeezed her arm. Thank you for seeing me when I was at my worst. Thank you for believing I could be better. You did the work to become better. I just gave you a chance. Sometimes that is all people need, a chance. That night, Victoria and Marcus lay in bed in their home in Brooklyn. Ellie was asleep in the next room, clutching a stuffed dragon she had named Prometheus. I have been thinking, Victoria said, about legacy. What about it? What do we want Ellie to remember? When she is grown and we are gone, what story do we want her to tell about us? Marcus was quiet for a moment. I want her to say that we built something good. Not just successful, but good. That we used our skills to make the world slightly better. That we saw people who were invisible and we made them seen. I want her to say that we loved each other. Victoria's voice was soft. Not perfectly, not without struggle, but truly. That we chose each other every day, even when it was hard. She will say both. Marcus pulled her closer, because both are true. They lay in comfortable silence, listening to the sounds of the city beyond their window. Two people who had been broken and had healed. Two people who had built a family and a company and a life worth living. 5 years could change everything. And they had. The following Saturday, Victoria and Marcus took Ellie to Connecticut to visit Elena. The house was the same as it had always been, white with blue shutters in a garden that bloomed with reckless abundance. Elena met them at the door, her face lighting up when she saw her granddaughter. There is my girl, how is my Ellie? Grandma! Ellie launched herself into Elena's arms. I built a tower. It was very tall. Did you? Tell me all about it. A car pulled into the driveway. Nathan climbed out, followed by his wife Sarah and their twin toddlers. 2-year-old boys with dark curls like their Uncle Marcus and curious eyes like their mother. Uncle Nathan! Ellie shrieked with delight and ran to greet her cousins. Nathan scooped up his niece and spun her around. How is my favorite genius? I am not a genius. I am Ellie. You can be both. Nathan set her down and watched as she immediately took charge of the twins, organizing some elaborate game involving sticks and imagination. Victoria hugged her brother. I did not know you were coming. Mom invited us. Said it had been too long since we all had Sunday dinner together. Nathan smiled. Besides, Sarah wanted to see the garden. She is thinking of starting one in Boston. They settled in the kitchen, the room that had always been the heart of the house. Elena made tea while the children played outside, their laughter drifting through the open windows. Victoria watched her mother, her brother, her husband, and the next generation tumbling through the grass. 4 generations connected by love and sacrifice and the determination to be better than the world expected. After the children had been given cookies and sent back to play, Elena sat down with her family around her. This was what she had worked for. Not just survival, but this, connection, joy, the sound of grandchildren laughing in the garden where she had once taught her own children to be brave. Nathan caught Victoria's eye and smiled. They did not need words. Brother and sister, separated for 5 years, reunited and building lives in the same region so their children could grow up together. After Nathan and his family left, after Marcus took Ellie home for bedtime, Victoria stayed behind to help Elena clean up. She sat down across from her mother with tea. You look tired, sweetheart. I am tired. Victoria cradled her tea. Running a company and raising a 3-year-old is exhausting. You are doing both beautifully. Some days I wonder if I am doing either well. Victoria's voice caught. What if I am making the same mistakes? What if I am erasing people without realizing it? What if Ellie grows up and resents me for working too much? Elena reached across the table and took her daughter's hand. You are not making the same mistakes because you are aware of the possibility. That is the difference between you and the people who erased you. You see people. You make space for them. You question your own assumptions. But what if it is not enough? It will never be enough if you are asking for perfection. Elena's voice was gentle. But sweetheart, that is not the goal. The goal is to do better than the generation before, to learn from their mistakes, to build a foundation so the next generation can reach higher. Victoria felt tears on her face. I miss Dad. I wish he could meet Ellie. He would have loved her. Elena's own eyes were wet. He would have been so proud of you, of what you built, of who you became. Do you think I made the right choice? Marrying Marcus again after everything? Do you love him? Yes. Does he see you? Really see you? Yes. Then you made the right choice. Elena squeezed her hand. Love is not about finding someone perfect. It is about finding someone willing to grow. Marcus grew. He changed. He became someone worthy of you. That is rare and precious. They sat in silence for a moment, drinking tea and watching Ellie through the window as she examined flowers with the focused intensity she brought to everything. I want her to know her worth, Victoria said. I want her to grow up never doubting that she deserves to be seen, that her voice matters, that she can build anything she wants. Then show her. Elena's voice was firm. Every day. Let her see you being brilliant. Let her see Marcus respecting that brilliance. Let her see what real partnership looks like. And when she is older, tell her the truth. Tell her about being erased. Tell her about fighting to be seen again. Tell her that even when the world tries to make you invisible, you have the power to reclaim your visibility. I will. Victoria felt something shift in her chest. I will make sure she knows. That evening, as the sun set over the Connecticut hills, 3 generations of Hayes women sat in the garden together. Elena in her rocking chair, Victoria on the ground, and Ellie in her mother's lap. Tell me a story, Grandma, Ellie demanded. Elena smiled. What kind of story? A story about when Mama was little. Victoria groaned. Mom, please do not tell her about the time I tried to build a robot out of the toaster. That is exactly the story I'm going to tell. Elena's eyes twinkled. Once upon a time, there was a little girl who was so smart and so curious that she could not help taking things apart to see how they worked. Did she break things? Ellie asked. She broke a lot of things, but she always tried to fix them. And sometimes, she made them better than they were before. Victoria listened to her mother tell stories about her childhood, about curiosity and failure and persistence, about a girl who grew up knowing that her mind was her greatest asset. And when Elena finished the story, Ellie turned to Victoria. Mama, will you tell me about when you disappeared? Victoria's breath caught. She looked at her mother, who nodded gently. That is a story for when you are older, sweetheart. It is a grown-up story about hard things. Did you come back? Yes, I came back. Why? Victoria thought about how to answer. Because I realized that being invisible was safe, but being visible was necessary. Because I had work to do that could not be done in hiding. Because I wanted to build something good for people like you. For me, for you, and for everyone else who deserves to live in a world where no one has to disappear to survive. Ellie thought about this with the seriousness of a 3-year-old trying to understand something beyond her grasp. Okay. When I am big, will you tell me the whole story? When you are big, I will tell you everything. The good parts and the hard parts. And all the parts in between. Promise? Promise. 10 years later, Victoria kept that promise. Ellie was 13 now. All long limbs and fierce opinions and brilliance that sometimes scared even her parents. She sat in the same garden where her grandmother Elena had once told stories. And Victoria told her daughter the truth. About being erased. About disappearing. About 5 years of invisibility. About coming back. About Derek and Isabella and Grace. About the slap that changed everything. Ellie listened without interrupting. When Victoria finished, her daughter was quiet for a long time. You were brave, she finally said. I was terrified. That is what brave means, being terrified and doing it anyway. Ellie looked at her mother with eyes that were too wise for 13. Did it hurt, being invisible for so long? Every single day. But you came back. I came back. Ellie leaned against her mother. I am glad you did, because if you had stayed invisible, I would not exist. And I really like existing. Victoria laughed through tears. I really like you existing too. Mom, can I ask you something? Anything. If someone tries to erase me, what should I do? Victoria pulled her daughter close. You fight. You document everything. You find allies. You refuse to accept that your voice does not matter. And if you need to disappear for a while to survive, you disappear. But you come back. You always come back. What if I am scared? Then you come find me. Or Dad, or Grandma Elena, or Aunt Isabella, or any of the women who have been erased and have come back stronger. We will remind you that you are visible and valuable and worth fighting for. Promise? Promise. They sat together as the sun set over the garden, mother and daughter, a woman who had been invisible, and a girl who would never have to be. That night, Victoria could not sleep. She got out of bed carefully, trying not to wake Marcus, and went to her study. There, In a drawer she rarely opened was a folded black apron with a name tag that said Victoria S. She had kept it all these years, a reminder of what it cost to be invisible, a reminder of what it took to come back. On impulse, she pulled out her laptop and began to write. Not code this time. Words. She wrote her story. All of it, the brilliance and the erasure and the disappearance and the return. She wrote about Derek and Isabella and Grace, about Marcus's failure and redemption, about the slap and the trial and the confrontation in the mountains. She wrote for hours, until her hands cramped and her eyes burned. When she finally stopped, the sun was rising. Marcus found her there, surrounded by pages of printed text. What is this? Victoria looked at what she had created. It is my story, our story. I am going to publish it. Why? Because there are women out there who are being erased right now, who think they have to choose between being seen and being safe. I want them to know they can choose both. It just takes courage. Marcus read a few pages, then looked at his wife with something like awe. This is powerful. But Victoria, are you sure? Publishing this means reliving everything. I know, but it also means making sure it matters, that the 5 years I spent invisible were not wasted, that other people can learn from what happened. Then publish it. Marcus kissed her forehead. The world needs to hear this. 6 months later, the book was published. It was called Simply Invisible, a memoir of erasure and return. It became an instant bestseller. Women wrote to Victoria from around the world. Women who had been erased by partners, by bosses, by systems designed to keep them small. Women who had disappeared and were trying to find their way back. Women who needed to know they were not alone. Victoria answered every letter, every single one. And on the 5-year anniversary of the book's publication, Hayes Sterling Innovations hosted a symposium on visibility and erasure in tech. 5,000 people attended. Half of them were women who had read Victoria's book and had found the courage to demand to be seen. Victoria stood on stage and looked out at the crowd. She saw Grace Ashford sitting in the 3rd row with Emma beside her. Saw Isabella Whitmore, now an internationally recognized expert on corporate ethics. Saw Dr. Chen and Priya and Alex and all the people who had believed in her when she was invisible. And she saw Derek Ashford. He was sitting in the back row, almost hidden. He had been invited because Grace had asked for him to be included. He had been released from prison 3 years ago and had spent that time teaching and mentoring and trying to build something good. When their eyes met across the auditorium, Victoria nodded. He nodded back. 2 people who had once been enemies, acknowledging that redemption was real. Victoria began her speech. 15 years ago, I was erased. My work was taken, my name was removed, my voice was silenced. And I accepted it because I thought that was the price of being brilliant while female. 10 years ago, I disappeared. I made myself invisible because I thought that was the only way to survive. I thought safety required silence. 5 years ago, I came back. I demanded to be seen. I reclaimed my name and my work and my voice. And I learned that visibility is not a gift given by others. It is a right we claim for ourselves. She paused, looking out at 5,000 faces, all of them listening, all of them seeing her. Today, I want to tell you that you do not have to choose between being brilliant and being seen. You do not have to disappear to survive. You do not have to accept erasure as the cost of success. Today, I want to tell you that your voice matters. Your work deserves credit. Your name belongs on everything you create. And if someone tries to take that from you, you fight. You fight because you are worth fighting for. You fight because the next generation deserves better. You fight because visibility is not just about you. It is about everyone who comes after. The applause started small, then it grew. Within seconds, 5,000 people were on their feet, clapping for the woman who had been invisible and had refused to stay that way. Victoria felt tears on her face, but they were not tears of sadness. They were tears of completion, of knowing that the work she had started 15 years ago had finally come full circle. After the speech, after the symposium, after the crowds had dispersed, Victoria found herself alone in the auditorium. She stood on the empty stage and looked out at 5,000 empty chairs and thought about everything that had led to this moment. A voice spoke from the shadows. That was quite a speech. Victoria turned. Derek Ashford stepped into the light. He looked old now, worn by years and regret, but there was something peaceful in his face. "Derek, I'm glad you came," Grace insisted. Derek smiled sadly. "She said I needed to see what redemption looked like when it was real." "And what does it look like? Like you, standing on a stage, telling your story, making sure others do not have to suffer the way you did." Derek's voice caught. "I will never have that, Victoria. I will never undo the harm I caused. But I can bear witness to yours." "You are teaching," Victoria said. "You are mentoring. You are doing good work. It will never be enough to balance the scales. Maybe not. But Derek, it is enough to be trying, to be growing, to be better today than you were yesterday." They stood in silence for a moment. Then Derek said, "Grace and I are talking again, really talking, about what happened, about who we were and who we might still become. Emma has agreed to have dinner with me next month." "That is good." Victoria meant it. "I hope it goes well." "Me too." Derek paused. "And Victoria? Thank you for seeing me when I was a monster, for believing I could be human again. We are all human, Derek, even at our worst. That is what I learned. The hardest thing is not defeating your enemies. It is recognizing that they are just people in pain." Derek left a few minutes later, and Victoria stood alone on the stage where she had just told 5,000 people her story. She thought about Elena, who had taught her that survival was not the same as living. She thought about Marcus, who had learned that love meant making space. She thought about Grace and Isabella and Derek, and everyone who had been part of this journey. She thought about Ellie, growing up in a world where her mother's name was on patents, and her father celebrated that instead of resenting it, where women supported each other instead of competing, where being visible was not a radical act, but an expectation. And she thought about herself. Victoria Hayes Sterling, 38 years old, CEO of a company that changed lives, mother of a brilliant daughter, wife of a man who had learned to see her. Most importantly, she was a woman who had been invisible and had refused to stay that way. The theater lights dimmed, the stage went dark, and Victoria walked out into the night, visible and whole and exactly who she was meant to be. 10 years later, on a clear spring morning, Victoria Hayes Sterling stood in a cemetery in Connecticut beside her mother's grave. Elena Hayes had passed away peacefully in her sleep at the age of 76. She had lived to see her granddaughter graduate from MIT with a PhD in quantum computing. She had lived to see Hayes Sterling Innovations change the tech industry. She had lived to see both her children happy and settled. She had lived to see Nathan return from New Zealand and build a life as a software engineer in Boston, married with twin boys who called her Grandma Elena and climbed into her lap for stories. Victoria placed flowers on the grave and sat down on the grass beside it. A few feet away, Nathan stood with his wife Sarah, their 5-year-old twins, quiet and solemn in their dark suits. "I miss you, Mom. I wish you were here to see what Ellie is becoming. She is so much like you, fierce and practical and full of love." Nathan sat down beside his sister. "Remember when Mom used to say that strong women raise strong women?" Victoria smiled through tears. She said it every time we doubted ourselves. She was right. Look at you. Look at Ellie. Look at what you built. Nathan put his arm around Victoria's shoulders. "Mom was so proud of you, Tori, not just for the company or the book, but for coming back, for refusing to stay invisible." They sat in silence, brother and sister, mourning the woman who had raised them to be brave. The wind rustled through the trees. Victoria felt her mother's presence like a warm hand on her shoulder. "You were right about Marcus, about giving him a chance to prove he changed, about trusting myself to know when someone earned forgiveness." She paused, touching the headstone. "You were right about everything, about survival, about visibility, about building a foundation so the next generation can reach higher." Footsteps approached. Victoria looked up to see Ellie walking toward her, 23 years old now, brilliant and beautiful and completely herself. "Mom, I thought I would find you here." Victoria smiled. "Your grandmother loved this spot. She used to sit here and think. What would she think about today? She would be proud, so proud. Today was the day Victoria was stepping down as CEO of Hayes Sterling Innovations. After 18 years of leadership, she was passing the torch to the next generation. Not to Ellie. Ellie had her own path, her own research, her own brilliance to pursue. To Dr. Chen, who had been there from the beginning, who had earned this role through decades of dedication and innovation. "Are you scared?" Ellie asked. Terrified, but also relieved. It is time for new leadership, new voices. I have had my turn. What will you do now? Victoria stood, brushing grass from her skirt. I am going to write, teach, spend time with your father. Watch you change the world. I'm just doing research, Mom. Just research? Victoria laughed. Ellie, you are working on quantum consciousness. You are trying to understand how the human brain interfaces with quantum systems. That is not just research. That is revolutionary. I learned from the best. You learned from your grandmother and your mother, and every woman who refused to be invisible. Victoria pulled her daughter close. And you are going to do something none of us could. You are going to be visible from the start. No erasure. No disappearing. Just brilliance. Acknowledged and celebrated. That is because you built a world where that was possible. They walk back to the car together, mother and daughter, 2 generations of women who refused to be small. That evening, Hayes Sterling Innovations held a gala to celebrate the transition. Victoria stood at the podium one last time, looking out at a crowd that included everyone who had been part of the journey. Marcus stood beside her, gray now but still solid, still her partner in all things. Dr. Chen waited in the wings, ready to take his place at the helm. Isabella Whitmore sat in the front row, now running her own ethics consulting firm, but still closely tied to the company she had helped redeem. Grace Ashford was there with Emma, who had become a therapist specializing in family reconciliation. Derek was not present. He had passed away 2 years ago, peacefully, having spent his last decade teaching and making amends. And scattered throughout the crowd were hundreds of people whose lives had been changed by the culture Victoria and Marcus had built. People who had been seen when others tried to make them invisible. 18 years ago, Victoria began, I stood in a restaurant and I was slapped. In that moment, I could have accepted invisibility. I could have apologized and disappeared again. Instead, I chose to be seen, and that choice changed everything. She paused, her voice thick with emotion. I built this company with Marcus, but it was never just ours. It belonged to Dr. Chen and Priya and Alex, to Isabella who learned that redemption is action, to Grace who showed us that survival is strength, to Derek who proved that even the most broken people can choose to be better. And most importantly, it belonged to every person who walked through our doors and demanded to be valued, who refused to let their work be stolen, who insisted on credit and recognition and respect. She looked at Dr. Chen. Today, I pass leadership to someone who embodies everything this company stands for. Someone who leads with integrity, someone who sees people, someone who makes space for brilliance. The crowd erupted in applause. Dr. Chen took the stage, and Victoria stepped back, her role complete. After the ceremony, Victoria and Marcus stood on the balcony of the building they had built together, looking out at the city that had once made her invisible. How does it feel? Marcus asked, stepping down. Like exhaling after holding my breath for 18 years. Victoria leaned against him. I am ready for what comes next. What comes next? Living. Really living. Not for the company or the legacy or the next big project, just for us. That sounds good. They stood in comfortable silence, 2 people who had been through everything and had come out the other side stronger. I love you, Marcus said. I have loved you since that night in the lab when you showed me what real brilliance looked like. I loved you through 5 years of absence. I loved you through 10 years of marriage, and I will love you until I die. I love you too. Victoria smiled. Not perfectly, not without struggle, but truly. That is all that matters. They went home to their brownstone in Brooklyn, where they had raised Ellie and built a life, where they had laughed and fought and forgiven and grown. And as Victoria fell asleep that night, she thought about the journey that had brought her here. From invisible to visible, from erased to celebrated, from lost to found. She thought about all the women who would read her story and find courage, all the girls who would grow up knowing their voices mattered, all the people who would refuse to disappear. And she thought about the simple truth that had guided her for the last 20 years. Visibility is not a gift, it is a right. And once you claim it, no one can ever make you invisible again. The story of Victoria Hayes Sterling, the woman who disappeared and came back stronger, ends here. But the legacy continues. In every woman who demands to be seen, in every girl who knows her worth, in every person who refuses to accept erasure, The legacy continues in boardrooms where women lead, in patents with women's names, in history books that tell the truth about who built what. The legacy continues in daughters who grow up visible, in sons who learn to make space, in generations who build on foundations laid by those who fought to be seen. And somewhere, in a garden in Connecticut, in the space between stars, Elena Hayes smiles. Her daughter learned, her granddaughter thrives, and the world is better for it. That is legacy. That is victory. That is what happens when women refuse to stay invisible.